Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
And we are live, Mets and overall baseball fans. Thank you guys so much for chiming back in on the channel for the latest live stream on all the latest news and rumors regarding our beloved New York Mets. So in today's episode, we're going to have a lot to break down here, a lot on the updated lockout status, including the implementation and really the impact that guys like Max Scherzer, Francisco Lindor, Brendan Nimmo have had in these talks this week that are so crucial to hopefully get a deal done. But again, it does feel very far-fetched at this point. A lot of breakdown, and we will be getting into everything that there is to know on the Mets prospect camp, what we have seen so far, not just from the prospects, but everyone involved, including Buck Showalter, Billy Epler, etc. We'll be getting into a plethora of other Mets topics, along with, of course, the news, the rumors regarding some guys like a Michael Conforto, a Chris Bryant that we touched on previously on a video on the channel. If you haven't checked out, please make sure to do. Links down below, as always, folks, in the playlist, and plenty more. And then we are going to be accompanied by, yes, co-host of the Shea Station podcast for John Boy Media, that being Jolly Olive. A lot of you guys know Jolly. He'll be on the channel right around, and I'd say a half hour or so into the live stream. So if you're watching this on replay and just want to cut to the chase to see his segment with me, make sure to do just that. There should hopefully be timestamps up by the time if you're watching this on replay. But other than that, we got a lot of breakdown, folks. I'm excited to get into it. I'm a little upset just knowing the lockout status as it is, but a lot to discuss since the last time that we were live here on the channel. So I see Adam, I see Sandy, great member on the channel. I see Elliot, Jose, Timothy, great member on the channel. Mama Worm, how's it going? Mr. Cheese, Mr. Fishy, Julio, Kish, great member on the channel. Jack, Lionheart, Z Sports Cards, Joseph, Al, Harrison, Jordan, Mad Mike, Michael, a new member on the channel. Thank you so much for the new membership, Michael. I really appreciate that. Welcome to WardyNYM. I hope that you enjoy everything that the channel has to offer. And everyone else, thank you guys all so much for chiming in. Like I said, I'll be taking your questions per usual, plenty towards the end of the live stream with Jolly, so you guys can share all your thoughts and reactions, not just throughout the live stream, but to have things answered towards the end as well. But let's dive in, folks. Like I said, we have a lot to break down today. Mark, how's it going? Great member on the channel, and I think that's a perfect way to start things off, folks. So before we get into these topics, there are two things I would like to touch on quick. One is my good buddy Mark, who's a member on the channel. As you see, if you're watching this in the live chat, was beyond generous to send me probably the most unique gift I've ever received before. I went to my P.O. box the other day. I got this big lawn box that was a little bent. I had no clue what it was. The woman thought maybe it was a golf club, and she asked, do you golf? And I said, I can, because I'm honestly not a golfer or anything like that. Ended up not being a golf club, and it just, I got to show you guys this before I do anything else. So huge shout out to my good friend Mark Burks, great member on the channel. Look at this thing, guys. Mark, so what Mark does in his hobby is he loves to carve out hiking sticks. He does it all by hand. He doesn't use any machinery whatsoever, and he made me a custom Mets type of hiking stick that I can use. I've never even had a hiking stick before. This thing is so awesome in itself. He spent plenty of time doing this. You see there's a little baseball carved on the top, and there's so many things I love about this. You got the notches as if it's a baseball bat. You also have, of course, the Mets logo. And what I love most about this more than anything else has to be the fact mic sounds a little different. I'll check my mic quick to make sure that I think the mic should be fine, but I'll double check it right now. Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, mic is a little different. Yeah, of course. The one time I checked my mic, it had a different thing going on. So the mic should be better now, folks. My apologies if I sounded a little stupid in the beginning of the live stream audio-wise. But yes, as you see here, look at it. Look how cool this is. He has the Mets retired numbers in here, which I just think is fantastic, with Keith Hernandez being the latest. Before we even get to see it announced at Citi Field this season, we got it ahead of time. So just, I'm blown away at this. This is the coolest thing. It's really, this thing's like as big as me because I'm not a tall fellow by any stretch. If you guys have met me in person at games, which I know many of you have, if you're watching this, then you know that I am a short king, as I like to call myself. But yes, this thing is sick. Thank you so much again, Mark. I really, really do appreciate that. Hype to him in the chat for sure. And there's one other thing that I would like to do for you guys before we get on to everything. Again, such a unique gift. I've never received anything remotely close like that. It is so cool. So thank you so much again, Mark. I will definitely be using that for hiking trips during the summer. I can promise you that one. But the next thing I want to get into before we get into all these Mets topics and the lockout, there's so much to break down, is the fact that if you guys have been following the channel, then you know that I have a bunny. And I know a lot of you guys have been waiting to see merchandise with her, as we love to call her, the Rally Rabbit, that being in Gigi, my Lionhead buddy. She's just around a year old or so. But I was able and fortunate enough to bring another, that being, yes, Gigi's sister now, that I'm going to be introducing here in a second. So you guys will see her throughout the actual live streams at different points throughout the season, whenever that's going to start, just like that you will with Gigi, because it's something fun that we do on the channel. So I'm going to go grab her quick, show her to you guys quick, and then we'll get on with everything that needs to be discussed. All right, folks, the newest member to the Wardy family is Stormy. Stormy is a 2-month-old lionhead as well. She's really fluffy, as you can see, and you're going to see her in live streams. Not necessarily for a Rally Rabbit. I think I might use her as a closer. So for any time the Mets are going to go to try to get a save, I'll bring her in the live streams when we're doing in-game live streams, just as kind of a good luck thing. Same thing that I do with my other bunny, Gigi. So again, if you guys haven't seen Gigi, you will see her, of course, throughout the live streams too. But yes, this is Stormy. This is the new sister that is involved, that you'll see throughout the season on the channel. Very excited for that. So everyone say hi to her. And Richard says someone call PETA. But yeah, that's Stormy, everybody. 2-month-old lionhead. Okay, that's enough about me. Now let's get into everything. As you can see, I'm not wearing my normal black shirt that I always wear. I'm wearing the Scherzer Day shirt. Shout out to my soon-to-be sister-in-law for sending this my way as a gift over the holidays. And of course, we got the Max Scherzer mug. I'm feeling very Max Scherzer pro today, especially with him having such a heavy part of things going on in negotiations between the MLB and the MLBPA. So let's dive right in, folks. Let's get into the lockout status. This is something that we'll be talking plenty of today, not just because of, I know that we're all tired of talking about the same thing, but also because of how crucial this week is. And if you're watching this, you know that, even if you're watching in replay, because the MLB, as we all probably know by now, has a hard deadline of February 28th to get a deal negotiated and done by in order for the MLB season to start on time. Now, the issue is that everything at this point indicates that the MLB season is not going to start on time, because these negotiations have not gone nearly as smoothly or really as significant as we would have liked them to from a fan side of things. Because the MLBPA now, they've been in the meeting room daily since the start of the week with the MLB. The MLB gave a proposal. It was really underwhelming. The MLBPA yesterday gave a proposal. The MLB felt it was really underwhelming. And then today, the MLB gave their latest proposal, to which, of course, the MLBPA felt it was underwhelming. You had Max Scherzer leading the way. He is one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent figure that you're going to see as part of these negotiations with the MLBPA. You have Francisco Lindor representing the New York Mets also, and Brandon Nimmo, just to name a few. Those are really the top tier guys. But Scherzer, something very interesting in case you guys aren't aware, is destined and set
to actually get some games played. He has a preset. It came out reportedly over the past couple of days that he is going to do his own kind of spring training setup, if you will. Starting March 1st, he's going to get a bunch of MLB players to get along that are, say, not able to play in spring training yet, assuming that the lockout is still going on, which, again, all indications is that that is going to happen as of now. He's going to have them all set up to kind of get together and do a backyard baseball to get the blood flowing, if you will. So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing that if it does, in fact, happen. I'm not looking forward to the fact of there continuously being a lockout here. And what we need to make note of out of today's meeting, because it actually just ended over the past half hour at the time of being live here right now. And it lasted all day, basically. They had times apart, of course. They spent a lot of times in the meeting room. But the MLB and the MLBPA, according to Jeff Passan, are still this apart on getting a deal done within less than a week. When it comes to the CBT, which is basically the luxury tax, they are $31 million apart right now. Pre-arbitration bonus pool, they are $95 million apart still. Minimum salary for a player, $135,000 apart. Draft lottery, because the draft lottery implementation is going to happen. But of course, the MLBPA wants a certain amount of picks, and so does the MLB. They are still 3 picks apart. So we all know that they're very apart, and the likelihood of things starting on time for the season is slim to none. It's felt that way really for a while now, but it's kind of reaffirming unless something can drastically change. But what also needs to be made note of, and this is something that I'm truly beyond bothered by, is that it was reported from the MLB that they have come out with their statement saying that if the season does not start on time, there will be no opportunities to make up these games. So no matter how many games are lost, they're going to start the season as is. So say if they miss 20 games, okay, then we're going to have a 140 game season, right? Maybe they miss upwards of 30 plus. We're not going to be able to make them back. They're not going to do double headers or anything like that to try and salvage the games that they lost, nor are they going to pay the players at all during that time either. They're trying to force their hand, just like how the MLB had no reason other than being selfish in themselves to propose the lockout in the first place when they could have still negotiated throughout the offseason. They're now really putting the hard deadline, saying that, yes, if we do not get a deal done in time to start the season on time, we're not going to make up these games and we're not going to pay anyone. Of course, that's going to hurt the pockets of all players. And Max Scherzer, who just signed that massive contract with the Mets, he's going to be if things start where the season is on delay, he is in fact going to be missing out on over $200,000. Literally, I'm trying to think if I can do them. I can't do math, so let me think. He's going to be missing out on $200,000. Is it a day? I don't think it's a week. It's like $230,000 he's going to be missing out daily. If not, I'm pretty sure I can't do math right now, so you guys can figure it out for me. Point is that players are going to be losing a lot of money. Of course, they're going to be pressured. This is what the MLB is trying to do. They're trying to get the MLBPA to cave completely to get a deal done. We're going to see how strong Max Scherzer leading the MLBPA and everyone else involved can stand firm and get something done that they feel is best for them. Because again, remember that when this deal is done, guys, this is going to be this way for the next 5 years. Now, it would be nice if these negotiations didn't happen every 5 years, if there was more longevity to them, but unfortunately, that is the case right now. So that is why the MLBPA is being so hard and stubborn, not stubborn, but just hard on getting things done their way because they've lost negotiations every 5 years for quite a while now. You know, it's been quite some time. It really, if at all, since they've gone their way. It's never been their way, and they're trying to make a change here. And unfortunately, in doing so, the MLB is going to do everything they possibly can to save every cent, which is going to more than likely mean that we're going to lose games to start the season. Again, how many? We're going to find out. It's really frustrating. Over 200K daily. Yeah, that's what I figured. So again, thank you guys in the chat for letting me know. That's just insane. Again, the point is that I'm not trying to defend and say, oh, you know, with his contract, that's not going to hurt him. Yes, it's still going to hurt him, but it's the point of why exactly this is happening when all this can be prevented. We'll get into it a little bit more with Jolly. I'm curious what his thoughts are going to be on it. But before we wrap up the MLB lockout status, there's one more thing I want to touch on, but I want to also address these donations in the chat. Thank you so much for those, guys. And guys, help us get to 100 likes for the first short-term goal here in the live stream. Always appreciate it. We're trying to get to 200 plus likes by the end of the live stream. If you guys are watching live or on replay, help us get to 300 as well. Always appreciate it, folks. Pat Metz with the $25 donation. Thank you so much for that. Read small market teams claim current thresholds don't stop big markets. They want to lower to try and slow down the big clubs. This shows big and smaller markets need to resolve their difference before anything happens. Yeah, No, there is a drastic gap between the big and small markets. But the issue with this as well is a lot of these teams that are quote unquote smaller markets, not all of them, but there is a plenty of them that are in fact capable of being able to spend as if they were a bigger market, but they choose not to because they don't prioritize the team in itself. You know, basically every team in the league is not prioritized by their owners because their owners have something else bigger going on. And it's really unfortunate. And there are, of course, smaller market teams that simply can't afford it, that want to, but they just can't. They just don't have the money through their ownership. And that I understand completely. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other smaller market clubs that act small market when they don't need to be small market, in the sense that they can for sure afford more than what they're actually giving to their team right now, and that they at least have a decent to strong fan base that can, of course, help with revenue. So again, it's really frustrating when you look at the large market, small market, big market, that type of debate going on. And no, you're still right though, Pat Mets, 100%. And thank you so much for the donation. I always appreciate that. Brendan, thank you so much for the $5 dono. Great member on the channel. Hope you're doing well, my man. I have an athletics trade question, but I'll ask later in the stream if trade talks are being discussed. Yeah, if you stay in the stream, ask later when we get on to rumored things going on. I think that would be best. But Brendan, thank you so much for the $5 donation. I'll make sure to address it once we get to that later here in the live stream. And again, shout out everybody, folks. Really appreciate everyone being in here so far tonight. And we're halfway to 100 likes today, so continue smashing that like and subscribe button. As always, Jose, great member on the channel, and all the other great members and supporters, thank you guys so much for being here. I want to see one comment. So your bunny is so cute. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, if you guys haven't seen my bunnies yet, you'll see them plenty throughout the season, and hopefully we'll have merch out for you guys too, that I'm really excited to get something done on that front. It's been long overdue, almost a year overdue. I keep saying I just need to actually pull through and get it done with the way that I want to be. But last thing that I want to talk about regarding the MLB lockout with myself before we bring Jolly in a little bit is, yes, Trevor May. Now, Trevor May, of course, has been very vocal, that we discussed in our last live stream just under 2 weeks ago, on really his disgruntlement with Rob Manfred. He was completely blunt, and he was 100% accurate on everything. Trevor May is, of course, part of the Players Union, has a voice, and he is someone that recently spoke on for John Boy Media's Chris Rose rotation that he is a part of, in which he shares his thoughts, saying that, yeah, he fears that the MLB season is going to be delayed purposely by the MLB, strictly for leverage. And he further reaffirmed that recently. It just came out yesterday on YouTube. Make sure to check it out, guys, with my buddy Giraffe Mark and James Shiano, their Mets Up podcast. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Just had Trevor May on for a great discussion for an hour. And in doing so, May did, of course, discuss further on the lockout status. And he really is concerned because he has been under the mindset that I'm quoting really what he is saying here for the most part, summarizing it, that he is under the stance that Rob Manfred has this mindset that he's had it all played out, that if we miss X amount of games, that's something that we're comfortable doing, to know that it's going to give us the best leverage in the end to get what we want. So he even said that he wouldn't be surprised if we don't have games until May. Like, that's how concerned he is, and I don't blame him at all. And this is something that I'm concerned about a lot too. I don't see any direction right now that would justify that the MLB season is, one, going to start on time, and two, even start within the first couple weeks of April. Like, this is concerning right now. And again, all it takes is one great negotiation. But the point is that they've spent hours and hours thoroughly on end together, the MLB and the MLBPA, and they just have not gone remotely close to where you would hope that they would get at this point in time, with less than a week to the February 28th hard deadline that, again, was implemented by the MLB. Just like how the lockout was implemented, it's another joke of a thing that they set up themselves to try to really get the MLBPA to sweat a little bit and hopefully get them to cave on certain things. Outside of the MLBPA has already given in to a certain extent on things, but again, they're still very, very apart. And I don't know when a deal is going to get done. But Dominic, thank you so much for being here. Great member on the channel. Really, really appreciate it. And I know that we all want baseball. We all do. And let's talk about some positives at least, right? And that is the Mets prospect camp. That at least we see some prospects. At least we see something happening. As we've talked throughout the past week on the channel, Mets prospect camp is officially underway. And before we get on to talking about some of these prospects quick, let's talk about some hires that have been made official either over this past week or the past couple weeks that we really haven't discussed. And it starts with Danny Barnes was hired as an assistant coach. Now, this is a really interesting hire for the Mets. This is a new position, and I love the thought of having new positions in the Mets organization, because when I think about teams that thrived last season in particular and are thriving in this new age of baseball, I think about the San Francisco Giants led by Gabe Kapler, and Gabe Kapler has the largest coaching staff surrounded by him in all the MLB, and that has definitely gone in hand with the tremendous amount of success the Giants had last year as the best regular season team in baseball, defying the odds in a lot of ways. And the Mets, by no means are they on the Giants level of coaching staff when it comes to the amount of people they have, but they are starting to open things up with new positions, which I do like. And Danny Barnes is someone who now comes in now. He's originally an alum of Princeton, and he is a former pitcher for the Blue Jays. He's only 32 years of age, and he's basically going to be used as kind of a Swiss Army knife, a utility infielder, as Buck Showalter is labeling him here as an assistant coach. So he's going to be utilized in various ways to help out the Mets. A young hire that is, of course, he pitched for the Long Island Ducks. He's a Long Island native. I love that as well, keeping things kind of centric. I don't know if he grew up a Mets fan, but I love the idea of him, of course, coming from Long Island. I myself am from there. I know a lot of you guys are too watching this, so that's great. But all in all, I really like the hire for the Mets, a young, innovative, analytically driven mind that's going to help Mets in a lot of various ways. I'm curious to see exactly how much of impact he's going to have. But outside of that, we have another really strong hire, and this one is pretty awesome because we saw the New York Yankees over the past couple months make a hire and be the first team in MLB's history to hire in the minor leagues a manager that is a woman. That, of course, was in Rachel, and I'm going to probably butcher her last name, in Balkovec. And now, because of Rachel Balkovec, Aucoin went through her mentorship program after she was made aware of Balkovec's involvement as a minor league manager with the Yankees. And yes, this is Gretchen Aucoin. She was a former player for Tennessee and Texas Tech softball. She is now going to come in as a development coach for the Mets. She is there right now in prospect camp, and she is the first Mets coach hire of a woman in the Mets history. So that is fantastic. I absolutely love that. So the Mets, of course, they're getting more diverse by the day. As you see, they have pretty much as much diversity as you can get right now, especially with their major league coaching staff. And now they're continuously doing it, having their first female hire that is of some type of coach in the system. You'll love to see that. So the Mets have been doing those hires, but now getting into prospect camp. So the unfortunate thing about this prospect camp is, yeah, we're seeing prospects. It's awesome, but you're not seeing everyone, because anyone that is actually on the Mets roster right now, their 40-man can't be involved. It's frustrating, but it is what it is. So you still have Brett Beatty, of course, the Mets' top third base prospect, the number one third base prospect in baseball right now, according to MLB.com and across many other sites. And, of course, Francisco Alvarez, one of, if not the best catching prospect in all of baseball. The Mets' number one catching prospect, has looked great so far in prospect camp. And then you also have Matthew Allen, who's made an appearance, even though that you're not going to see him do much because Allen had another surgery this offseason after, of course, coming back from Tommy John. So he's going to be missing all this season. It does delay things for him a little bit, but Matthew Allen is someone that still has a very bright future. That is the number one pitching prospect for the Mets. I don't think that's much of an argument to say. JT Ginn is there, another top pitching prospect for the Mets. Calvin Ziegler, who the Mets drafted last year, and I believe in the first round, 30th overall. He is involved there. So you got a lot of things going on, a lot of top prospects for the Mets, a lot of minor leaguers overall, and guys that were signed on minor league deals that are looking to potentially make some impact for the Mets, either out of, say, the pitching staff, bullpen-wise, or potentially as a depth hitter, outfielder, etc. So overall, it's nice to see Buck Showalter being able to talk about some players, them getting active. But again, it still does suck that this is not normal spring train. This is just Mets mini prospect camp, if you will. This is going to go on for a certain amount of time, and then we'll see exactly when spring training is going to officially pick up. But what we know to this point about the prospect camp is that not just we have the prospects involved, there are multiple former Mets that are getting themselves involved to kind of just hang out and help things out and be an advisor, get things done, to really participate. I know Andy Chavez has been a part of it. I know that David Wright is going to be part of it. I'm not sure if he is if he's there already, but I know that Buck Showalter said that he will, along with plenty of other former Mets, wide variety of ages, some guys that just retired, that were in the minor leagues that were part of the Mets organization in the past, and guys who, of course, have been a part of the Mets organization for quite some time. But before we go any further, I want to thank you all so much for chiming in, folks. I hope you guys have been enjoying the live stream so far. We got a lot to break down, like I said, especially on the Mets free agent and trade target front, on rumors I've been swirling this week that we discussed in previous videos on channel. We're going to get Jolly's thoughts on all of that, and also just his raw thoughts on the lockout as a whole and how it has impacted him personally as a fan, and plenty more. And yeah, a lot to break down here. So again, appreciate all you guys. Help us get to 100 likes if we haven't gotten there already. We're trying to get 200 by the end of the live stream. And also, of course, help us get to where are we trying to get to? 13K subs for the next short-term goal. We're literally just over 100 subs away. So continue smashing those buttons if you guys would be so inclined. And thank you so much just in general for all the support. Guys, we've been talking about, it feels like so much of the same repetitive stuff, unfortunately, really for upwards of 4 months because of this lockout. And it sucks. I don't enjoy it. Trust me, I hate having to talk more so on speculation with certain things when in reality, it's not like I have so much that's going on to talk about. It's really unfortunate. I'm trying to make the most of it, but just know that your support has meant everything to me, especially throughout these dog days that is in this MLB lockout. So know that I do really love and appreciate you guys all so much. Michael King, great member on the channel. How's it going, my friend? Jose, how's it going? Yoshima, great member on the channel. All you guys, let's see. What are the chances we actually get a deal by Monday, says Marte Moonshot. Marte, I know you from Twitter, I believe. What's up? I don't see it happening. I really don't. I think that there's easily like at most 5%, I would say right now. And I'm not trying to come off as a pessimist. I'm saying this in complete line with everything that we've seen so far. The amount of work that needs to get done on both sides is tremendous. It's a significant amount, and quite literally 5 days, 5 effing days to get a deal done by that hard deadline. So I don't like those odds. I would love to be proven wrong, but I'm fully prepped and ready for the season to be delayed and for spring training to continue to be delayed. I hope it's not drastic outside of what we've seen so far, but again, things just aren't looking good, unfortunately. And that's the biggest takeaway that I've seen from everything throughout this lockout this far. And the fact that all this could be avoided is what bothers me so much. And yes, I did see what Marcus Stroman said. I don't think I'm going to touch more on that. I know if you guys didn't see it already, Marcus Stroman, doing what Marcus Stroman does, took to Twitter yesterday to share his opinions, to which he would soon delete the tweets after, because he has this kind of bipolar relationship going on with his actual thoughts, and then realizing, oh, I shouldn't have probably said that. You'd imagine that he probably would have learned his lesson to put the phone down by now, but no, he's going to continue to do just that. And again, I don't have anything personal against Marcus Stroman. I was a heavy advocate for his for a very long time. I loved him during his time in Toronto as well. But there's been endless occasions of him just showing a lack of professionalism and just it at times disgusting behavior, to be quite honest with you, that isn't justified whatsoever. The latest was him knocking on Billy Epler, and saying, look at that hire, that's all that needs to be said. He's beyond blessed to not be part of the Mets organization and all this other if you look at the tweets that he said prior to him realizing he's not coming back to the Mets, he was all in favor of coming back to the Mets, and he deleted those too. I'm going to try to, make sure that people can find the receipts, even though that's what everyone does. Stroman's a great talent, but he can't stop from getting himself in his own way. And I think a lot of people would appreciate him more if he wasn't the way he was, really social media wise. It truly is. I'm just touching the spectrum of endless things that he did to really change the minds of many, including myself. And it's really unfortunate. We'll see how Chicago Cubs fans feel about him. But all in all, the Mets prioritize the top pitcher on the market over Marcus Stroman. Yeah, I can understand why it bothered him. He was an emotional wreck throughout the entire process of it transpiring when he realized that, the Mets don't want me. And you'd have to imagine that, the Mets didn't want you for good reason. They wouldn't even sign you to a 3-year deal at $80 million. Yeah, there's a very good reason why they didn't want you. And by no means was it your talent. Your capabilities were not the problem. That was the least of your problems. Again, he can't get himself out of his own way. It is what it is. And that's probably where I'll leave things there. Same thing with the Matt Harvey situation. I don't really want to touch on this much outside of what I'm about to say, because one, I don't have enough knowledge on the situation. I don't think the public has enough knowledge on the situation. I think that we have found out too much in a short period of time. As we know, Matt Harvey, of course, had to speak in court regarding the Tyler Skaggs situation. Of course, him unfortunately passing over these past couple of years. And Harvey was open and about his drug abuse, which again, unfortunately, something that wasn't all that surprising to me personally, just based on his tenure here and the kind of, issues that he had, off the field. I did have a personal issue with how Terry Collins approached things when he did his interview through SNY. I just felt like it was the wrong time to speak on those things when there wasn't a need to. I don't really want to break them down further. It was just a bad situation, all in all. Just not a good situation for Harvey and for everyone involved there. It just not a good look. Again, I don't have any personal ill will with Matt Harvey, and Terry is someone that I've always been a fan of. I've had my gripes with at times, but that was just something that I felt personally was very uncalled for, to really kind of beat on a guy while he's down to make things public that didn't need to be made public. That was my biggest takeaway from that situation more than anything else. There just wasn't a need to go there. And I don't know if this is something that Terry's had built up for a while, that he's just been chomping at the bit to finally say something publicly about. Because he let it all out there. He kept this to himself for quite a while, obviously, but this is something that you'd imagine he would continue to keep to himself versus making it public for all the media and all of us to see. But that's just kind of my take on Harvey and that situation. I don't want to go through it any further because, again, it's a touchy subject, not something that I have nearly enough background on to try to justify having strong stances, all in all regarding that situation. Just a bad situation overall. And I hope for Harvey's sake that he is going to be in a better spot than where he has been in the past. And I know that I'm sure he went through a lot throughout that situation as it was transpiring regarding the Tyler Skaggs incident. Texas, thank you so much for the $10 donation. I really appreciate that. Hyping the chat for Texas as well, folks. The Mets are going to need a center fielder in 2 years and move Marte to the corner. Chris Bryant doesn't make sense, and the Mets won't and shouldn't go back to giving up defense in center field. Interesting take here. Now, here's the thing. Chris Bryant does make sense as corner outfield. He does make sense in center. I do believe that, of course, Starling Marte will shift, so that is a fair point. I don't think he's going to stay in center throughout his entire tenure with the Mets. I do think he will for at least the next 2 years. But 2 years from now, yes, that is fair. I will say this, however, Chris Bryant is someone that has versatility is what makes him most appealing all in all. This isn't something where I view KB as, okay, just because he really isn't known and can't play much center is why you shouldn't go after him. I think he's very much someone that makes sense for the Mets and is the reason why the Mets are still connected to him that we're going to be talking about for quite a bit later in the live stream in this one. So I understand. I get what you're saying for sure, but I think outfield wise right now, center field, the Mets have two options of Brandon Nimmo and Starling Marte. And especially the Mets do commit long-term to Brandon Nimmo, which very well can happen either after the season or in season. They can get an extension done. Again, unlikely with Scott Boras being his client. But point is that especially based on Brandon Nimmo's future, that's really going to dictate a lot on the future of center field because Nimmo is someone that could be left to start the upcoming season the next couple of years. And then maybe he will shift back to center if, say, Marte loses his legs a little bit. But Marte's also a freak of a human being. So who knows? All I know is that Chris Bryant does, in fact, make a lot of sense for this Mets team. And I don't think that Marte's potential lack of ability at the center field position 2 years from now should be a detriment, especially in the scenario where Chris Bryant isn't here any longer than 5 years. And 5 even feels like a slight stretch. Again, not impossible, but I know that he's probably looking for 6 or 7. I think at most the Mets would go 5. But again, we'll expand on that here more shortly. I'm going to address these next couple comments, folks, and then we're going to bring Jolly in with a lot to talk about on his front. Pet Mets, thank you so much for the $10 donation. I went through the 94 stoppage. And no one thought that they would ever cancel the World Series. We know what happened. Yep, I wouldn't be surprised if the season doesn't start until at least May. I wouldn't be surprised either. I wasn't able to experience what happened in 94. Obviously, I wasn't around, but I'm well aware. I'm well informed on the situation. I'm also well informed on how mediators did not help the situation, to which the MLB proposed a mediator yesterday, and the union said no once again. Nothing's good on the lockout front. There's not much positives to take away right now. It's been baby steps, and normally you would think that baby steps wouldn't be a bad thing. Baby steps are a bad thing when the MLB put in a lockout when we didn't need to have a lockout, waited 43 days to start negotiating, to have any type of discussions with the MLBPA. So it's just a joke. Again, it's a broken record at this point. You guys know how I feel about this. If you guys have been following along the channel for at least a little bit now, because we've talked about the lockout every single week in these live streams. Do you see Alvarez starting in 2022 for the Mets? Starting? No, not a chance. Could I see him potentially getting at-bats by the end of the season? Yes, I think that that's potential, but it's also far-fetched. I discussed Alvarez in a video earlier this week. Make sure to check it out if you haven't already, guys, because Alvarez, the big thing with him that he said in prospect camp is he wants to crack the Mets this year. That is his goal. But the only real way for that to happen is one, if say one of Nito or McCann either underperforms so poorly that you need to get someone else in there, or two, an injury happens that's longer term. Not that I wish it. And you don't want to rush Alvarez either. So keep that in mind. But two, that Alvarez is one of the best hitting minor leaguers in baseball this year. That's really the only true way to justify bringing him up at some point this year. But again, it's a fluid situation. We'll see what happens. I think Alvarez is set to make his debut more so in 2023, at least have some type of impact versus this year. But again, it's all up to him. I love his confidence. I love the optimism. And yeah, make sure to check out that video if you haven't already, because I had a lot of fun breaking down Alvarez, who is such a beauty of a prospect that's going to take the league by storm sooner than I think a lot of fans may seem to realize. All right, folks, we're going to be getting jolly in the stream in a second. Again, thank you guys all so much for being here. Make sure to continue smashing that like and subscribe button. Always appreciate the support, everybody. And we're just at 100 likes. We're just under 15 away, guys. So make sure to continue smashing those buttons. And if one of you guys realize you become the 100th like in the stream, please let me know, and I'll give you a massive shout out as always. But you got to be genuine. Make sure to let me know that you're actually the 100th like. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. I think a high AV 3-year deal for KB seems fair. It's possible. Again, it's going to go directly in hand with what his market is going to be post-lockout and how much time there is to get deals done, you know? Dominic says, if you think the games won't start till May, then how many spring training games will be played before the start of the season? I honestly don't know, Dominic. That's another very good question. I wish I had answers to. I don't know. We've already missed what would have been a good chunk of games. So I don't know. I really don't know. And no one knows right now. That's the unfortunate thing. I wish I had more sturdy answers for you guys regarding the lockout and the games and how everything would be, set up, implemented. Because I genuinely don't right now. It's such a wild card. It's such a big question mark, and it's frustrating as all hell. I will say that much. And there's a good point here from Courtney regarding a strike. That's a great point. If we do in fact have, of course, a delayed season and the games won't be made up, and you also have players not being paid, you are at risk of a strike. You 1000% are. So it makes things even 10 times worse. So the MLB, they've done all this, man. What the MLBPA is asking for is nothing drastic, and it makes the game better. It genuinely does. There's all inclinations that this is going to make things better. So it's again, I know it keeps sounding like a broken record, but I cannot begin to tell you guys how frustrated I am about how everything has transpired. It's exhausting. It truly is. And we're just around 100 likes. Thank you guys so much for that. Really, really appreciate it. It is beyond frustrating as a fan to do this last minute. And it's even more frustrating knowing that negotiations could have started so much sooner. They could have, been more advanced sooner. But again, that's neither here nor there. It is what it is right now. So now it's just a matter of how much can they get picked up over these next couple of days prior to the deadline, if at all. And if that's not going to happen, which again, I would be surprised if it did, how is this going to look impacting the season, and how much and for how long? Such embarrassment. Wait too long to start now under the gun. Yeah, exactly. And this was all part of the plan, though, from the MLB especially. The plan was to kind of set this all up the entire time to do something where we're going to push things last minute. And as Trevor May was saying, and I agree with him, it seems like he's going to be right, where they're going to push things really as far as they possibly can to try to get the MLBPA to cave. Now, whether they're going to or not, that's really the big question. And that's going to dictate so much over not just the next couple of days, but potentially weeks and so on and so forth. What's up? You hear me, John?
I can.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. If you've been watching at least a little bit, just been more of a lockout rant. I think that's kind of the norm every week nowadays.
Yeah.
But before we get into anything, guys, if you don't know who Jolly Olive is, I don't know what you're doing. Please make sure to check out all the links down below after the stream to check out the Shea Station podcast, him, and of course, Jerry Blevins. Yes, the Mets legend himself, and also Jolly's own MLB channel. He's doing great, fantastic content, all things MLB, coming out with weekly stuff. So very excited again this one, Jolly. You've been on the channel once before a couple months ago, and I feel like we're going to be talking about a lot of the same things. How sad is that?
Yeah, man, I want to get one during the season so we can talk about some real, like, current Mets baseball, but it'll be good. It's always a good time on Wardy's stream.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, at least look, let's start things off where I really just want to know kind of what your stance has been throughout everything that's been happening with the lockout. Like, you personally as a fan, what have your emotions been like, especially as a Mets fan? Because, you know, you see me repping Scherzer right now. It still feels like he's not. I see him, he's signing jerseys, he's doing all this stuff. He still doesn't feel like that's real yet. Like, nothing feels like it's real yet. And it sucks because we haven't let it soak in yet. So you personally, what has your stance been on this entire process? And also, in particular, you know, with John Boy Media's Trevor May, are you in agreement with him on thinking that, yes, we might be at risk of going all the way to May until games are going to start, or disagree? I'm really curious to know what your stance are on all that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things I want to tackle. The first, I want to say that as a Mets fan, this offseason makes perfect sense to me. When we broke the bank, right, to get Max Scherzer and get all these great pieces, it makes perfect sense that the season would be delayed until an unknown point. As for Trevor May, I've been listening to his spot on Rose Rotation. I also listened to his spot on Mets Step today. That's another great Mets podcast with Giraffe Tech Mark and James. And Trevor, Trevor's been very vocal, and I think he's been really transparent, which has been really good. I think honesty is the best policy here. And yeah, I think that we are fully at risk. For those who are active on Twitter and have Jeff Passan's notifications on, just like me, you just saw his 10-tweet thread about the CBT, what it means, why it's necessary to end the lockout. And until we inch closer to getting a middle ground in the CBT, these negotiations that are going on all day, all night are really meaningless unless somebody blinks. And I don't know who's going to blink first. I don't think the players necessarily have a ton of leverage here, so to speak, but I think they will hold out as long as they need to. So when Trevor May says that things could go until May, I kind of fully believe him. But in all honesty, guys, it is for the betterment of the sport, and it's going to suck. It's absolutely going to suck in March, in April, and possibly May when we're getting nothing and the sport is getting hurt because of it. But it is for the betterment of the players, and they do deserve it. This fight is for the guys in the middle ground, the guys that are making league minimum, that get their 100 reps and then don't get another shot because teams don't want to pay them and stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of different scenarios where these guys get the brunt of things. It's not about, I saw an Associated Press headline about how Max Scherzer drove a Porsche to Jupiter today.
I knew that something was going to be made a joke of that, right?
Yeah.
I was like, of course.
And it's just like, no one's talking about the owner's second houses and their yachts and all that. It's just, sides are playing sides. Like both sides want to utilize the media to the best of their ability, which is why I think Trevor May is doing the right thing, going on these podcasts and, speaking honestly and transparently about all these things. So it's going to go. I really don't think that things will get resolved this week. I had a good feeling earlier in the week when, the meetings were going a little bit longer, and it definitely is a step in the right direction. I don't want to be too negative here, but yeah, I think it's going to go for a little bit, guys.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's really important when you look at, Trevor, I've been loving what he's been doing because yes, there have been players that have been more public, and you could see that throughout the months. They were being more like, you could tell that they were getting more frustrated as times were going on. And I really appreciate that he's using his platform to the abilities that he has. And Now, when you look at exactly why the lockout is the way it is right now and how long it can prolong, you're right. It is for the betterment of the sport. It sucks. It's going to lose fans for sure. But when it comes down to if the MLBPA can stay, sturdy, and if they can hang on, and that's something that I don't know if they can, just because they haven't ever to this extent. I think what we're seeing, I mean, yes, we know the situation back in 94, but the point is, especially now, can they hang on? If they can, then yes, I think that there definitely can be a good outcome, but it is going to result in a big sacrifice of losing a good amount of games. Now, I will say this, I hate the double headers, the amount of Mets double headers we saw last year, drove me crazy. So I didn't love the idea of making them all up that way. I knew that that's the only way that you could, but at least if you can make them up somehow is still important. So knowing that they're the MLB is saying, yeah, we're going to make sure that one, you can't make up any games, and two, of course, we're not going to be paying you. We're just not in a good spot right now. And again, I don't really know what else there is to say at this point until we find out more information, but just an uncomfortable thing, especially for us Mets fans. This is, of course, the one-off season where everything seems to go right. Get the best pitcher in baseball, not named Jacob deGrom, and who knows when we're even going to see this guy pitch.
It's tough, and I know it seems like dire straits right now, and I think that it is a very noble thing for the guys that are, the big earners in the MLBPA who are representing them right now to, hold out as long as they can. We saw headlines today that Max Scherzer is losing upwards of six figures every day that the MLB lockout will continue into the regular season. And listen, he's been one of the most adamant voices of that group. He's sort of a leader among those guys. And for him to kind of take a hitch and, his albatross of a contract, he's still going to make a lot of money, but that's money that he earned that he will lose every day for the betterment of other players, which I think is a noble thing. And it's not just Scherzer. It's going to be a lot of these guys that will bear the brunt of losing these games. And I think, the middlemen will still get hurt more because that's always what happens to the middlemen. And that's the reason why we're in this situation in the first place. But I do think I do think the owners will blink eventually, but I think the pressure needs to be put on them first. Spring training isn't even underway under a normal schedule yet. Games at least. So I don't think they're feeling the heat under their ass yet. I think it's going to take a little bit longer for that to set in.
Yeah, it seems like it's once we get to the point of actually missing games, that's where things are going to kind of be watching, hour by hour, day by day to figure out, okay, who's going to kind of blink first, right? But hopefully it is the MLB, and my personal opinion, yours, the minds of many that have been on the side of the players union for the most part. But okay, so let's talk about some positives, because even though that we can't really see them do much yet, the Mets did so much this offseason. So last time you were here, we talked about guys that we think would land with the Mets, and you actually nailed some of them, especially I think the biggest one that I love right away is Mark Canha. So what has kind of been your overall viewpoint? I know that you've talked about it extensively on social media and on your pod, but just in a nutshell with what the Mets have done so far, how impressed have you been? How surprised have you been? And have things gone the way that I kind of expected them to, or did they kind of blow through the water, especially with Max Scherzer surprising everyone, including myself?
Yeah, I mean, the Scherzer signing surprised everybody, but I do think that the Mets were always going to set themselves up to add a couple offensive pieces. I'm glad it was Canha. I think Canha gives them a lot of versatility and some on-base factor at the plate. I really like the Eddie Escobar signing because it's versatility there. And I think that what fans need to bear in mind is that I think the Mets are trying to push the envelope in 2022, whereas, we're starting to see these other NL East teams sort of building a little bit. Like the Miami Marlins are definitely building something. I don't know if they're 2022 ready, but I certainly think they will be 2023 ready. And I think the Mets have that 5-year plan of wanting to compete and get to the World Series and win it, and they're trying to make it go a little bit faster because I think they know that the competition is heating up a little bit. The Braves obviously just won a World Series. That team is still good. They're going to get underrated again. Pacoda is going to project them to win 80 games, and they're going to probably win the division. And then you have the Marlins heating up. The Phillies are still going to burn their wallet until it bottoms out because they don't have any other choice right now. So the Mets being proactive was a very good thing. I definitely did not think that they were going to spend to the extent that they did, but I certainly don't believe that they're done either. It makes it interesting for what's going to happen post-lockout, whether or not the Mets are going to continue to pursue some free agents.
Yeah, post-lockout, that's going to be the big thing. And I want to dive into that extensively with you here. But before we do, I just want to shout out everyone again. Thank you guys so much for being here in the live stream. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Make sure to check out Jolly on Shea Station. And of course, Jolly, all of his normal channel itself. And also check out the Warehouse Games for John Boy Media, where you made your debut. And it's not going to be the last time we see you. So yeah, absolutely love that. Before we get into anything else, I just want to ask, what was that entire process like, doing something like that? Because of course that was your first time doing anything blitzball. Yeah. I've never done that either. When I watched them, especially when I saw Jake and Jimmy first do things, you would think that, okay, maybe it wouldn't be that difficult. Yeah. But especially watching some of your at-bats, it's like, okay, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. So what was that entire ordeal like?
I mean, we call baseball a game of inches, but blitzball is a game of like centimeters. I mean, I was about a couple centimeters away from a walk, a hit that would have won the game. And, those things obviously didn't happen for those that watched the game. It's incredibly fun, and the whole week was incredibly fun, getting to hang out with some former big leaguers and watching them just do what they do best, which is compete. It got really, really, really intense out there. I mean, the intensity was set in as soon as you stepped out onto the concrete. It seemed like good fun when everybody got there and we tried on our unis and everyone was laughing and joking. And as soon as the umpire started the game, you felt it. So that was really cool because I hadn't felt something competitive in quite a long time. And, the warehouse games are going to continue after that, all this tournament is over and done with. So my blitzball game has improved. I'm not going to spoil anything, but my play has definitely seen better days since that very first game. I was a deer in headlights, man. I don't know what hit me.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, just a couple days of practice, you're going to be better than you were the first day, right?
That's what I'm saying, man.
I'm excited to check it out, though. It's definitely a great job. Make sure you guys check it out if you haven't already, too. But I do want to address a donation here quick, and this is from Pemets, who's been beyond generous on the channel always. Thank you so much for that. It says, when they come to an agreement, it has to be more than 5 years, 8 to 10 to bring stability. They need to win back fans. So Pemets has been preaching like every single week, wants a deal that's going to be longer than 5. I would hope that. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. Like, I'm sorry, Pemets. It's not going to happen. Like, it hasn't happened for how long? I don't exactly know. Has it always been 5 years? Are you aware of that?
It's usually on 4-year intervals.
Okay. So, yeah. So, again, it would be nice if we had more stability. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I think this is the first step in potentially getting somewhere like that down the line. Again, if the union can hold firm. Because if
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, if they can really, hold firm here and make something drastic where the MLB didn't just flat out win like they usually do every how many years, then that can be a fantastic step into something positive for longer years on a deal, 5-10 years going forward.
Yeah, I definitely think that, in history, we've had many baby lockouts that haven't been covered as widely because they've been resolved in about a few days or so, just because the changes were so minute. But like you said before, about every 20 years or so, this type of thing happens where one side continues to win and win and win. This was the players originally when players first got free agency, and they increased the spending threshold for players every single year up until 1994. That's when things shifted. The owners started to win every year because nobody wanted to see the same thing happen again. Now it's just flipping on that same interval. So even if there is a customary deal where the sides come to an agreement in this perfect world where everybody gets what they want, in 20 years, this will probably happen again. And this happens in a lot of sports, but some sports are just better at resolving it than baseball is.
Yeah, no, beautifully said, especially when I'm not going to go too far, but with the kind of commissioner that we do right now, you'd have to imagine if things would be different and Rob wasn't in there. But again, I digress. So talking about positives and things that I can't stop talking about because there's nothing else to talk about is rumors, possibilities for the New York Mets post-lockout. Again, it's 4 months going on with this.
Hey, you've been doing it really well. Really good job, man. I don't know how you've pressed on through this.
I mean, the show must go on, but still, it's definitely frustrating knowing that we have all this build up for so long and we still don't have a true idea as to what's going to transpire. But what we do know, at least from latest reports this week, that being from my good buddy Pat Ragazzo, who covers the Mets on the beat through an affiliate through Sports Illustrated, doing a great job. He came out with a piece how at least one industry source has guys like Michael Conforto and Chris Bryant as the two most realistic options for the Mets post-lockout and addressing the outfield. Now, Buck Showalter, Billy Upler did make public, of course, over this past week that they have talked about the future of the outfield, because when you look at the depth there that I've talked about already, you really don't have much. You have clearly, you have Nick Plummer. There are guys out there that make sense depth-wise. Like I personally I would love the idea of going after Tommy Pham or even to a certain extent Andrew McCutchen. But when you look at bigger name bats, if the Mets are going to go for a significant bat and still prioritize it outfield-wise, that's where guys like Chris Bryant, who of course is versatile, can play out there, and Michael Conforto bringing back on a reunion is possible. Now, Michael's someone where last time we talked about him, we both were in favor of the Mets bringing him back. And since that time, it seemed like, okay, he's not going to come back. That bridge had burned, that ship sailed. Now we really don't know, because that is the one interesting factor about this lockout, how Pre-lockout, the Mets were able to take complete advantage of having a deadline to get something done, knowing that you only had so much time to make moves. The Mets were just able to throw the dough like no tomorrow more than any other team. Post-lockout, the Mets may very well be in a similar position should they wish to go down that route of only having so much time to get players signed before they say the season is going to pick up. And, that's a lot of stress on the players, all in all, especially if they're, say, haven't traveled somewhere before. And Conforto, who's homegrown, is a really big question mark. And I love the idea of potentially keeping him on shorter term. I don't see the Mets, of course, keeping him if you want to say, 5-6 years. I just don't see a world where that happens.
Yeah.
But what's been your take on that report in particular? If the Mets are going to prioritize a significant bat potentially in the outfield, someone like Chris Bryant or Michael Conforto, who are you potentially more in favor of, and who do you think is actually potentially the most realistic?
So I am going to cheat, and I'm going to go back to somebody that you said before you started talking about KB and Conforto, because I think that the Mets brass have become smart enough to realize that Brandon Nimmo may not be fully reliable to play an entire season. I love Nimmo. I think that he's a great ball player. I think he's one of the best left fielders in the game, but he is injury prone. There's no secret there. And I really do think finding him a platoon bat, even though it's not entirely necessary because Nimmo can hit lefties, like it's not really a problem. I do think finding him a platoon bat to give him days off to ensure his health would be the best option for the Mets. It also provides you depth, and in case there is an injury to Nimmo or somebody else, you have a third outfielder there. So I like the Andrew McCutchen idea a lot. McCutch is only going to play left field. He can play a little bit of center, but his range is not quite there anymore. And I do think having him splice in with Nimmo would be a great idea, and I think he would take a 1-year deal. I think he would probably be keen on that. The thing about KB and Conforto, you can move KB to left field once Beatty or Vientos is ready or somebody else. And Conforto can play both corner outfield positions, but like the Mets, they've tied up a lot of money, and like this is a 5-year plan. I want to keep reiterating that. We're pushing the envelope for sure. Like we've made ourselves known as contenders for this year, but like there's time. There's going to be other great free agent classes with players to choose from. And I understand the Mets fans that want to see Conforto back. Hell, if the Mets brought back Conforto, I would not be upset by any means. He's a homegrown guy who I love. And if he retired a Met, I think that would be great. But the fact is that the sense around the club is that I feel like they've moved on. And that's okay. I think Michael is probably going to enter the prime of his career with another team. And he's probably going to get maybe a 6 or 7-year deal somewhere else. And that's perfectly fine. If the Mets can spend conservatively and spend smart, which they've already displayed that they have an ability to do, I think the most logical step is to find a fourth outfielder that can give Nimmo relief, play the corner outfield positions, hit lefties, and just do what is asked of them.
That's completely fair. And that's something that may very well be the more realistic route, depending on, we don't know exactly how much they're going to throw post-lockout. What we do know is that you can never say that's impossible with someone like Steve Cohen as your owner, right? So we can shoot for the stars, but it is important to look at not just this year's offseason, but in the years going forward. I talked about earlier this week, Juan Soto. I do, in fact, believe that the Mets are going to be heavily in on him once he is available. And yes, he will be available. He's not signing an extension with the Nationals. You can book it. I'm taking that to my heart. And I hope I'm not wrong. I really hope I'm not wrong. But all jokes aside, I will say that when you have what they're doing right now, you have some guys out there. There's one player that I know that you are so heavily in favor of, and so am I. And it feels like he's not as much a reality. Not that the Mets don't have interest or won't have interest, but rather just what his preference will be. And that is Seiya Suzuki. So we don't need to harp on him too much, but I know that Andy Martino touched on briefly. Again, it's Andy, so take it as you will. Yeah. But what's kind of just your take all in all? Do you think that Seiya Suzuki is someone that still may be a potential fit? Should the Mets maybe have to overpay a little bit for him? Because I think that's something that you probably have to do to land a guy like him who basically has over half the league of options right now.
Yeah, I don't think it's impossible. I think a lot of fans have written it off, and I think, some look at the Red Sox and maybe the Mariners as the favorites, but I definitely don't think it's impossible. I think that, the Mets are preparing for the doomsday scenario that happened last year, which is everybody gets injured and you have to reach into the armpit of depth below the depth that you had already established. And they don't want that situation again, which is why they've restocked the farm with guys like Nick Plummer, just to have them there just in case. And then also, to dip into free agency and just get pieces where you can. We talked a lot about this on today's Shea Station, but just because two guys play the same position, it doesn't necessarily mean that, the Mets won't find time for one of the guys. Like if you have a talented player on your roster, they will get reps. They will find at bats. It may be scarce. Like we saw JD Davis take a considerable step back last year with his injuries and then also the opportunities that he was given. But it's not like he faded completely. He just struggled in that role. And there are guys that can succeed in that role. I don't know if Seiya Suzuki is one of those guys. He's very used to playing every day. But if the price is right, I still think the Mets should act on a guy like him because we have no idea what he is. Now, Japanese position players don't always translate very well. Their track record isn't great aside from Ichiro and like Hideki Matsui. That's pretty much it. But still, Seiya Suzuki is once in a lifetime kind of player with 5-tool potential. And his ask is like a 4-year, $50 million deal, which is really nothing considering what the Mets have spent so far and what they'd be willing to spend on a guy like Conforto at KB. So if they are in that mindset of shooting for the stars that you mentioned before, I much more likely see them going for a Seiya Suzuki, that kind of option, rather than a 6 or 7 year deal that they're going to be tied into. That's going to block some of their younger guys.
Yeah, and it seems like Suzuki would be kind of the best of both worlds in the sense of, yes, he doesn't have the MLB experience, but the Mets do at least have enough depth outfield-wise right now, especially with someone like Mark Canha, where they really could get creative platooning things at that right field position. Now, Mark can play all over the outfield. I'm assuming he's going to be the starting Mets right fielder as of now until proven otherwise. So that, I think, would be very enticing as well. Another thing that I've thought about as well is a pitcher that the Mets showed plenty interest in pre-lockout. Again, he's someone that I don't necessarily know what the likelihood is of the Mets landing him, but I know that they had plenty in Yusei Kikuchi. And when you talk about intellect in itself, that's something that very well could be an interesting factor. Should say the Mets, and just a hypothetical, land Kikuchi as well. Maybe that could be a little bit more enticing for someone like Suzuki. Just knowing that you have someone of the same descent can kind of get you more acclimated to the club versus not having one at all. It's little things like that they think maybe wouldn't make a drastic difference, but they very well could outside of the dollar. And in comparison to a Chris Bryant or even a Michael Conforto, yeah, that is a cheaper option and something that, of course, is low risk, high upside. It's just a matter I really think of if Suzuki is willing to come to Queens when, it seems like if I had to be a betting man, I'd say he's going out west. I think you'd probably agree with that too. But again, definitely someone that I would hope that the Mets at least show a certain level of interest in until, say, they can't land him. But
yeah, I definitely think it's going to come down to whoever creates the best home for Suzuki. I mean, there's a reason that Ichiro spent basically his entire career in Seattle, and that's because they took out the necessary resources to, one, make him a star, and two, get him acclimated best in MLB. They provided him with translators and all that kinds of thing. And they, it was really the first of its kind, really, an international star coming overseas and stuff like that. I think, teams like the Red Sox and, the aforementioned Mariners, they're geared for that kind of thing, but the Mets could easily set aside resources if they really wanted to pursue Suzuki in that capacity.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of having an owner like Steve Cohen, because finances aren't a problem. Like the Mets, they're just on the cusp of, what they've begun here with developing, growing their staff, and not just coaching staff wise, but front office. Like they're going to, thankfully, money isn't a problem for them nearly to the same degree as it is, say, with other teams, and really advancing everything to make things as comfortable for their players as possible to get the best success out there. So, yeah, no, that's a great point. Again, it doesn't seem like it would be much for the Mets and Billy Upward too. It's not like Billy doesn't have experience when trying to go after international prospects leading the way with Shohei Ohtani. So it's things like that to take in consideration for sure. But outfield wise, okay. So you think that probably going to go more so a depth route versus, say, going all in. Right. Now, my one thing that I will say, and somewhat counter to a certain degree, is Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom. Yes, you have this 5-year window, but that window only revolves around them. So how much are you going to get out of them health-wise is such a big question mark. And how much are the Mets prioritizing building the team around those two, that two-head monster? Because let's face it, if those two aren't healthy, if they say can't produce what we would hope that they could, then this team isn't going anywhere. So much would have to change in a short period of time. So that's why I think you're viewing, yes, we have the 5-year window, but specifically the next 2 years, I think are crucial for this team and really just try and make themselves contenders as quick as they are without giving up the farm and doing so, making sure that they're still building for free agency. So what's your take on that?
So like everyone who's a Mets fan knows that we have a very top heavy farm system, guys that are going to be ready either this year or next year. And I've talked so many times about pushing the envelope, but I think the Mets best chances are coming up. I think it's 2022 through 2024 are really this team's best opportunity to go for broke and really just try and make this World Series thing happen. I think the most important thing first, though, is getting across the 162 game stretch and making it to the postseason and proving that you belong with other contenders. The Mets have a great track record in postseason play. It's always just been getting there for them. Yeah. It's always just been getting over the hump and getting to the postseason. Once they're there, we've never lost an NLDS. And I feel like these teams are always built well for the postseason. And when you look at our roster in a 5-game or 7-game set, it looks really good. There's platoon options. You have a 2-headed monster at the top. And then we really just need one of these guys in the rotation to find their form and step back up a little bit, whether it's Cookie Carrasco recovering from injury, Taijuan Walker, if he can find himself from the first half again. These are guys that are still very much capable of putting forth great performances. It's just, what kind of version of them are we going to see next year? And does that prompt you to sign for more depth? Does that prompt you to make another big move there? I personally am on the side of depth, just giving yourself as many options as possible, because like I said before, the long haul, in my opinion, is the most important part. I fully believe in this team if they can make it to October.
Okay. See, that's a very interesting take, because I believe in this team too. I think it's just a little hard for me to kind of garner exactly what the expectations are and if they're going to meet expectations, just because we haven't even, I haven't even seen spring training games yet. Yeah. I just need to see these guys in the uniform. I'm under the belief, as a damaged Mets fan, even though I'm young, that Starling Marte, he's going to have a Yoenis Cespedes incident when you see him on the horse. It's things like that I'm always pushed back by naturally. And that's how it's going to be until we're finally under the mindset that, the Mets are going to be competitive year after year after year, because we just haven't seen it, unfortunately, at least for our lifetimes. But okay, so now with the Mets, let's talk about pitching for a minute, because you're under the mindset of more so depth. Depth-wise, I do believe that they're going to add there, but I would be beyond surprised if they don't add at least someone of significance to be their number 3. Now, what is defined as significance? That's a great question, right? Is that a Yusei Kikuchi? Is that enough for them? Well, they went after both Kevin Gausman and Max Scherzer, and we're trying to land both. Kevin Gausman is a little bit on a higher level than Yusei Kikuchi. I think we can agree on that one. So Oakland A's, of course, have always looked like that beautiful, perfect trade partner, especially with all the rumors going around with Jeff McNeil and his future. So what's been your take from everything that you've seen at this point, kind of garnering your thoughts throughout these past couple months on Mets pitching-wise? Do you think that depth-wise is just best for them? Or if they say are going to prioritize maybe more so of a bigger name, where would you like to see them do it? Do you think that a trade route is best for them? Or do you think that the free agent market led by the Carlos Rodons, the Clayton Kershaws, that again, that's a pipe dream? I don't see that really happening. Just a thought.
It's not impossible. I don't think it's entirely impossible.
Nothing's impossible with Steve Cohen. It just Kershaw, everyone thinks he's going to go to the Rangers, stay home, and for good reason. I don't blame people for thinking that.
Sure. For me, I do think that the Mets are going to be very, very, very protective of their top 6 guys in their farm system, which is going to make a lot of these trades difficult. I don't think Brett Beatty is going anywhere. I think he is the future at the hot corner. I honestly don't think Ronnie Mauricio is going anywhere. I think they're going to stretch him out at third base, maybe left field. They're going to find spots for these guys. Mark Vientos is going to find a spot. He's one of the closest to being major league ready. A trade would be perfect for this team. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that the Mets love their prospects, and we haven't had a wave of developed talent since, the last crop in 2014 that led to a pennant and a wild card appearance with all of those young arms. It's kind of been a slow reset, because the crop that came in the middle of this one and that 2015 crop was the Ahmed Rosario, Andres Jimenez, that crop that got traded for Francisco Lindor. So the Mets haven't had homegrown talent to themselves in quite a while. I think they're going to be a little protective of these guys. And whether that leads them to the route of a Carlos Rodon, which they have been linked to in rumors, I'd personally be okay with that. Although, he has failed physicals before, so there is something to be talked about there. I personally think that throwing a bunch of fish in the barrel with a bunch of these depth signings like a Yusei Kikuchi or a Danny Duffy or whatever, just trying guys out that have had prior success, at least recently, would be the best option for the Mets. Right now, they have 6 or 7 starting pitcher options. Toss in 2 more and just make these guys fight it out. And what? If some guys slow up, you have guys in AAA, like Tyler McGill can start the year down there. David Peterson can start the year down there. They have options. They can go back up and down. So I just think depth is the best thing for this team, because last year they preached depth. I really love what they did in the offseason to get guys like Luke Casey and stuff like that, but it just bottomed out so quickly. So put yourself in a situation where even when things begin to bottom out, there's still things behind them,
I'm glad you brought up last offseason because that's what I was going to start with here. Because you're right. Last offseason, the Mets made literally endless moves. They made like the most moves
a lot of great moves
in their history, and very strong moves. And then everything just unfortunately, went to shit, to be quite honest with you, because of the health. It was as simple as that. And there are various factors for that. But depth wise, yeah, I was feeling most confident I probably ever was as a fan. They just did a complete 180. It's like we went from having no pitching to having so many different guys available. And then, of course, everything fell short.
And that team still managed to succeed for 4 months. Do you see what I'm saying? So if they had just a little bit more depth behind them, they probably could have made the long haul.
I agree. But my only issue with that is the fact that you look at the NL East at the time, and they all were going through their all hell, respectively.
That's true.
Whether it was
That's very true. It's a good point. It's a very good point.
So, like, what are we going to get this season, especially if we do have a delayed year? How is that going to impact the players? I think it's going to have potentially similar impact to this last year, where we had the den ball, just for them to switch it again mid-season. Pete Alonso was right about everything. Case hint, if you guys don't know, but. Pitching wise, I agree. Depth should absolutely be priority, and I do believe it's going to be. My only concern personally is the fact that your number one and your number two are still wild cards health wise, and the rest of your rotation is still a wild card. There is uncertainties here, and I know that I'm sounding like a hypocrite because I really want Carlos Rodon. It doesn't justify the whole like certainty thing health wise.
Sure.
But the point of getting at least an arm where like the Athletics of Chris Bassett, who I know that he doesn't have longevity because he was a reliever, has only been a starter for a couple of years. And then, of course, Sean Manaea, who has dealt with some injury concerns in recent years. Those are still guys that I feel like bring more of a stability for a rotation that could keep things afloat versus potentially banking on, just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it's going to stick, like a Kikuchi, like a Duffy. So I'm all in favor of depth. I just personally don't see how that is enough, if you get what I'm saying. Because I think you're banking on too much still.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'm an eternal optimist when it comes to the players themselves. And I think that what I'm trying to gear our pitching staff more towards is like for just guys to like go 4 or 5 innings. I know that everybody, including myself, hates that starters don't go deep anymore, but it's just a fact of it. Like guys that only have to face the order 1 time or 2 times are just generally more successful. It's just a fact of the modern game of baseball. So I mean, go find guys that can give you 4 solid innings and then just stock up that bullpen, because especially if you already have so much depth on the offensive side with the signings you've made and the prospects that are being so close to being ready, I think that you can afford to take a lot of flyers on guys. I know that that's like kind of a select opinion, and I know that like we've spent big, so like why not spend more? Why not continue to push that envelope until it absolutely creases? But at the same time, I just keep thinking about next year and the year after, and those are also solid free agent classes with a lot to offer. And I don't think the Mets are going to run out of money by any means, but I think they might just be biding their time, and I think that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, and I agree with the sense of, it's important to make sure that you're still viewing the future. It's very easy, especially for someone like me and many Mets fans that have been in a lockout. They just want to be lifted, let's just go balls to the wall crazy. Let's continue making moves and just get really amped up again like we were pre-lockout. But it is important to realize that this is, this is a what do you call it? This is more so a marathon than it is a race, especially with the team construction outside pitching. There's still a lot of pieces here that are going to be here for multiple years now. And how are we going to continue to build around them? And yeah, the market, especially pitching wise for agency, there isn't a lot that I think is, great for the Mets. I agree with that. Like Rodon is my personal favorite, but it doesn't mean that I think that he would be great if, say, like many other pitchers were available in the free agent market. Like it would be a different discussion then. So no, I agree with you on that front. I really do. And before we go any further, I do want to address a couple donations here in the chat on that. Very interesting comment to going back to outfielders for a second. Pat Metz, thank you for the donation. Says Nick Plummer is very interesting to me. Between AA and AAA, over 400 on base percentage, seems to have a little speed and gain some pop. If he continues to grow at this pace, he could be a steal. Now, when the Mets picked up Nick Plummer, my first initial reaction was, okay, this is a Randy Arozarena or, Adolis Garcia, 2.0.
When the Cardinals ditch an outfielder, it's usually a good sign, man. I don't know. Like I'm kind of with Pep Metz here. I like Nick Plummer. Nick Plummer's old. He's 25 and, he was drafted in 2015. Like he's had a long development cycle, but to give up on him right when he's major league ready, like to be capable of being a depth piece was really odd to me. So I also like Nick Plummer. It's a good point.
Yeah, I don't understand what the Cardinals' rationale has been in recent years doing stuff like this. Again, maybe Nick Plummer isn't going to match anything. That very well can be a possibility. But when you look at depth-wise, and I know that the Mets don't have great outfield depth, so keep that in mind, but he's already right up there with clearly as guys that are going to be trying to compete for a spot.
They're 4-5. They're right there. And like the Cardinals, they have a solid outfield. I get why Nick Plummer was probably cut there because maybe they viewed him as a starter and it never panned out and they don't really have a necessity for him on their active roster. But that was a great get for the Mets. And this is another one of these moves that it flew under the radar and it was actually scrutinized because this was back when the Mets hadn't made any moves yet and everybody was starting to sign deals and stuff like that. Fans were getting really angry. So when this first came out, people were just responding with like, what the hell is this? But I honestly think this move was fantastic.
Yeah, I remember when it transpired. Same thing with I think there was a waiver claim of a Rockies reliever.
Yeah, which was also a great move, by the way.
Yeah, if they were solid moves at the time. But again, it's especially when you're waiting for something big to happen and you're just getting the little pieces, fans automatically think, oh, this is all we're doing. They don't understand the depth aspect until it kind of all rounds out, if you will. But Brendan, talking about the Oakland A's here, thank you so much for the donation. He says, hey guys, you think if Athletics want to trade Olsen and Tony Kemp, rumors are out there, we can trade Don McNeil and prospects. Who do you think it would take for Montas and Chapman? Okay, and I thought you were going that we're going to trade for Olsen originally. I'm like, no. Nope, that's not happening. Olsen might land in the division, but won't be with the Mets. Montas and Chapman. That's a good question. I've talked about Montas and Chapman in a proposed deal or at least a month ago, and I'm pretty sure I had McNeil in it, Mauricio. I'm trying to think who else was in there. Did I throw David Pearson in there too? I don't know if I did. I think there was a number 10 prospect for the Mets I threw in there, and I think I at least no. Oh,
yeah, good because I like Hamill.
I think it was Rodriguez.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. And JD Davis too. But Dom seems like a perfect fit for the Oakland A's. I mean, first base wise, especially if they lose Olsen. I know that Joe DeMayo, especially that I've talked to him plenty, he thinks it's like destined to happen. Like no matter what, if a trade happens, like Don's 100% going to be their first baseman. He just views it as a perfect fit. So I don't know. I mean, I would love Montas and Chapman. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the price is going to be too high. I think if the Mets do a trade involving Chapman and pitcher, it's not going to be Montas. I think Montas's value is right under Luis Castillo's, in my opinion. And I just don't see how you're going to be willing to cough up that type of prospect capital when Billy Epler, at least from what we know so far, isn't really willing to do that. He wants to build through free agency. So what's kind of your take on that? Again, I would love Montas and Chapman, but I think if anything, a Manaea or a Bassett is far more realistic.
So actually, we talked about like the caveats about a lot of these guys. Like Rodon has the injury history. We talked about how Bassett doesn't have like that longevity. Manaea has been injured in the past. If the Mets are going to make a trade, I actually do think it will be for someone of the caliber of Frankie Montas and Luis Castillo. I do think that like they're in that break the bank mentality and go for broke mentality. And like, I don't think they want to trade their top prospects, but I think they will if the deal is right. I do think Dom will probably be involved. I don't think Jeff will be involved. I think the Mets have not given up on Jeff yet. I think he's going to be our starting second baseman next year. And then it's a matter of who the A's are looking for. I think the Mets can't afford to trade pitching prospects, so it won't be guys like Matthew Allen or JT Ginn. The only one that I view as expendable, and I still don't think that they will do this, but the only one that I view as expendable at the top is Ronnie Mauricio, just because of the shortstop position factor and how he's already struggled defensively there. Like, where is he going to play? That kind of thing. But it's not going to be Beatty. It's definitely not going to be Alvarez. So I don't know if the package will be right because the Mets have their guidelines to it, and then the A's probably would like to trade somebody like a Bassett or a Manaea before Frankie Montas because they know the kind of return they can get. I think Montas and Olsen are going to get paired in some monster deal, maybe with the Yankees, maybe with some Eastern team. I really do think that's the route they'll go, and maybe they'll just keep Chapman and the other pieces because maybe they won't find supplemental deals for that, and that's okay because the haul they'll get from those two will be enough for them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And Chapman's someone that I do think is still a fit for the Mets. I know that you were in favor of him a couple months ago. So was I. And I
like Eddie Escobar, though. I'm okay with it.
I like Escobar, too. I agree. I just think that if the Mets are going to address the third base position this offseason, I think that Chapman is towards the top of the list, mainly because of the fact that you could potentially land one of those three pitchers along with them. Like if you're going to go all in and do a potential blockbuster or something, why not try to kill two birds with one stone? You know, they showed interest in another certain level of a bat pre-lockout. If that was Chris Bryant, KB would be the Mets starting third baseman more than likely. So then you put in Matt Chapman as kind of that substitute, but in the trade market this time. So yeah, no, I agree. I think Escobar's fine there. But it really would come down to Jeff McNeil's future. Like if McNeil stays here, then I think it really lessens the idea. But if say he is dealt for whatever reason, then yeah, you have to make sure that you fill the void there. You move Escobar to second right away. Then maybe Chapman's going to be your starting third baseman. So I see the idea and the positives and the negatives in that situation for sure, based on McNeil's future. But to touch on McNeil for a second, because I really haven't talked much with it about you.
Yeah,
you are under the stance that you think he's going to be with the Mets. And I agree. I think that it's something where the Mets don't need to part with Jeff McNeil, especially when they don't have a Javi Baez. This is not someone that is nearly as expendable based on that reason. Now, McNeil, the reasons why all the rumors picked up, it seems like it goes beyond his play, because I don't think reviewing this right now and just Jeff McNeil having a down year. It goes beyond that, right?
Yeah.
Now, to what degree, I don't know. No one knows. We'll find out soon enough if there is a higher level than maybe what we initially thought from the Rat Raccoon incident. But the point I'm trying to make is McNeil is such an interesting character as to what his future is going to hold, because the Mets can get really creative with him, but also how much time are they going to have post-lockout to potentially slam something where you're going to be willing to give up your starting second baseman that's probably going to bounce back, that's probably going to hit north of 300 next season and on a favorable contract, and are you going to be able to replace him in time? So it seems like that there are more reasons as to why McNeil won't get traded, based on, in part, how much time you're really going to have to get a deal done. Maybe things will be different at the trade deadline, and it makes me think last year at the trade deadline, the Mets originally showed a lot of interest in Trevor Story, and there's a good chance they would have landed him. And that didn't happen because the Rockies weren't going to sell because they're idiots. But then you have Javi Baez, same thing. Like they went after Baez, and Chris Bryant didn't happen. But the point was that they were really making sure that they locked down a second base fit for the most part for Lindor, at least for the remainder of the year. So in essence, it seems like McNeil very well was going to be parted with if Javi Baez stayed. And the Mets did want to keep him. They just didn't want to go to 6. Yeah. So what's kind of your stance further on Jeff McNeil on all that?
I think you nailed it. I think it was kind of a domino effect that sort of kept Jeff McNeil here. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that the Mets never thought about parting ways with McNeil. I don't know what goes on inside the clubhouse. I'm not going to pretend like I know. But I think that the Trevor Story, John Gray deal never came together, and I think it would have been a fantastic fit if the Rockies had their shit together, which they didn't, and that's okay. I think that Javier Baez wanted to get paid. He deserved to get paid, and he got paid. And that obviously didn't work for the Mets' plans, but I'm glad they didn't give him 6 years, if I'm being super totally honest, because he had a great half season with us, but who knows how that translates for 12 times that. So that's crazy. And I think that we've kind of fallen into the lap with McNeil. And I don't think people had as many problems with his hot-headedness and his aggressive attitude when he was raking when in 2019 and 2018. No one had an issue.
I loved him when he did it because he was so good still.
It was almost endearing in a way because of how much he cared about his craft, which is why I think that Jeff McNeil won't be bad again. I think he cares too much about his game to let himself linger in mediocrity like that. I think his defense is solid. I think he gives you versatility, which is always a plus for the Mets. And there's enough security around him where he's not going to be relied on as this 2 or 3 hitter anymore. He's going to be one of your lower lineup guys, one of these table setters. And I think that'll work to his advantage more. He needs to work on not pull hitting as much. He needs to work on getting his line drives a little bit more in the air. But these are things that Jeff McNeil has proven himself capable of doing in the past. So I don't see why he can't do it again.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing that I will say about McNeil and his performance, which was very eye-opening, and I don't have the exact numbers because I talked about this with James Shiano I think at least a month and a half ago on the channel. Sure. And it was through a post on The Athletic how Jeff McNeil, how he's been shifted and how much it has impacted his play. Yeah. That's a big thing that I really took away from that. Like, okay, he's still a bounce back candidate, but especially with how advanced shifting is nowadays, us Mets fans know far too well because Mets did actually really good at it this past season, which is, again, I don't like the shift, but I like when it benefits our team at least. I think
that's the problem.
I think Lindor feels the exact same way, right? Because he doesn't like the shift.
And that's the thing with the Mets. We have such great defenders that if, the infielders were banned from standing in the outfield, I do think this team would still do great defensively, which is the problem with the shift.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And quick thought. Do you think that there's any possibility that the shift will be going away anytime soon?
I actually do. I don't know if it's going to be part of this deal because there's so many things that the MLBPA is focused on, and the shift is definitely not one of them. But we saw Joey Gallo's quote today about infielders should still be allowed to move around the infield. I don't think anybody's arguing that they have to stay in one place, in one enclosed circle of where their position is. But I do think that things change when there's 4 outfielders. I do think that it's harder to hit for extra base hits when there's not a gap. What gap are you hitting things into if there's no gap there? So I don't think it would be a catastrophic change to the game. I think it would please old heads, and they've taken a lot of L's in the recent years with how their game has changed. I think they would definitely appreciate it.
The universal DH, forget it.
Yeah, I mean, they're already losing something there. So, I mean, you might as well give them this. And then, if you want to create more offense, you're not only adding the DH, but now you're adding the possibility for more extra base hits. So it just makes the game better in that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm someone that's in favor of, being against the shift. Like, as long as it's universal, not if it's just the Mets, because that's what the Mets were for so long. That's why they had all their issues. But again, if it's a universal thing, then I agree with you on that one. It was interesting to see Joey Gallo's comments on that today. But let's talk about something that's a little bit more, shooting for the stars again, which is what we love to do so much. Talking about your wish list, at least. We'll see what it is. But going in hand with that, at least for me a little bit, here, a donation from Orphanage Builder DeGrom. This goes back to, of course, I think it was the St. Louis Cardinals minors when DeGrom had a pitch against all those kids. I think that's what he is joking about here.
It's a great man.
Yeah. Imagine if we somehow pull off Freeman and Soto. I will imagine that's all I will do.
Freeman. No. Come on, it's funny to post the meme. Well, you know what? Here's the thing. I posted the meme about Scherzer a year ago about him in the Mets cap and how silly that was, and that came to fruition. So never say never. But it just messes so many things up. It makes everything so convoluted, and it would never look right. Freddie Freeman in a Mets uniform.
It would never look right, but it would feel so good.
It would feel awesome.
I talked about yesterday.
But I don't hate Braves fans that way. I hate the Phillies. I'm a Phillies hater through and through. I don't hate the Braves.
I'm an hour away from Philly. Yeah. I feel that. I really do.
And you were at those rough Mets Phillies games. You were at the tough ones, dude.
Oh my God. They're so bad. Especially last season. I went to the first game, the opener, DeGrom. They lost. And then I went again, and it was everything was so separated because of protocol still. I was I think I was 2 rows from the field. There was no one in the section though. There was just me. Right. So everyone just talking shit, throwing stuff at me when I'm walking out.
Man.
I will say though, I know that you haven't been there yet, but you got to make sure you go to Pittsburgh. It is such a refreshing feeling.
Yeah.
Diaz gave up the walk off, the grand slam.
Were you at that game?
I was in front row right behind the dugout.
That's fucked up, dude. I don't know how you're still a fan. That's crazy.
But it's funny because as I'm walking out, no one said. Everyone was just so happy to be there.
Because that was a really nice moment for Pirates fans.
Yeah, it was.
It was otherwise kind of a lost season, which is the only solace I take in that moment. We really needed that win. But if it was gonna happen to us, I'm sure as fuck glad that it wasn't the Phillies and it was the Pirates instead.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I agree with you. But Freeman again, far-fetched. There was an interesting article though that I brought up in my video yesterday, and that came from Mark Simon, and he came out yesterday. And it was a weird coincidence how a lot of reports are coming out that just tied in together. That's why I want to talk about it. But he broke down the numbers on Pete Alonso and his potential injury risk, and I thought it was interesting because
I did see this too.
Yeah, because Alonso 2019 to present has over 100 dives at first base. Goldschmidt is the second most with 60. He has a 59% chance, which is 10% above average of getting hurt on the IL at any point this upcoming season. So that really hit me where it's okay, don't get me wrong. Freeman is the only way Freeman happens is if Steve Cohen just goes absolutely Steve Cohen mode, where he's I'm going to go Thanos and just make this happen. But if it were something like that to happen, I could understand obviously why it would benefit the Mets outside of the hitter aspect. Just knowing that even though Pete wants to, of course, be the everyday first baseman, he's not going to make the argument when you have someone like Freddie Freeman coming in. I highly doubt it. And two, Alonso just profiles best as DH. I know that he's done really well. He did really well at first base last year. All credit to him. But he looks like a guy straight out of a movie where he is that DH. He's the absolute guy you don't want to face in that lineup.
It's the problem with Alonso and Nimmo. They both improved so much last year, and now they're both sort of geared towards taking a step back, and I don't think either of them want to. Alonso, I'm sure takes no pleasure in any of these rumors because of how much his range improved. But like you said, 100 dives compared to 60 is crazy, and Alonso is just not I don't want to say not that athletic because he's a professional athlete. Of course he's athletic, but like compared to world-class first baseman, yeah, he is a tier below, and that's perfectly fine. It's the same thing with Nimmo. Nimmo's range improved incredibly in center field in 2021, but I definitely prefer Starling Marte there. There's no doubt in my mind I would much rather see Brandon Nimmo in left field, in addition to, you know, his arm as well. That being said, I just don't see Freeman being a fit because I still think the Mets brass want to see if there's anything left in the tank for Dom Smith. I don't know what happened last year. I really thought Dom figured it out in 2020 and was going to crush baseballs in 2021. And now you have this open spot coming up, and I think they're going to kind of dip toes for each of the guys that kind of had lost 2021s, see if any of them fit up there and just take it and run away with it, whether that's, you know, Cano or Dom Smith or J.D. Davis or whoever it is. But introducing another bat into the fold, I know I've mentioned many times, everybody will find playing time, but at the same time, Freddie Freeman's going to cost you $200 million. So, like, do you want that? Do you want that price tag? Do you want him to? Do you want a first baseman? Do you want two first basemen? One of them playing here until he's 36. You know what I mean? Like,
yes, that's just me though. That's just me. That's me being selfish and stupid. And that's honestly only because I've loved Freddie Freeman his entire career, which is so bizarre given who he plays for. But he's
so likable.
He's that anomaly of a player, and he's like best buds with DeGrom. So it would just be so sweet to see them together. But again, I know I'm shooting for the stars here. But let's get to a donation, and then actually before that, Dom Smith. I'm glad he brought him up because he had such a down year, but like J.D. Davis, like Michael Conforto, like Jeff McNeil, what do they all have in common? They had injuries. Yeah. And Dom had his lingering injury like all year. And think about the hitting approach. I don't think people seem to realize enough just how bad the hitting approach was because of how drastic things change. And I'm someone that's obviously pro analytics. I know you are too, but the Mets just dived in so heavily. And I don't know if this is because Zach Scott was the analytics guru with the Red Sox. So he's like, it has to be everything by the numbers, right? With Quattlebaum when they were brought up and everything. But they ingrained it so heavy on them that, especially with guys like Conforto as well, they just, it was beyond overwhelming.
I think it was the switching of the hitting coach halfway through the season. I think it was a guy like Zach Scott who probably didn't want the job he was given and was thrust into it because of Porter. And I think Zach Scott did what he naturally did, which was, you know, instill the things that he knows best about baseball onto the players, which is not a bad thing by any means. It happened to be in the middle of the season with a different hitting coach and a bunch of guys who were struggling and were also injured. It was just kind of a recipe for a poor offensive performance.
Yeah, no, 100%. Couple members here that I want to shout out quick, that being and Darren, who's a great member. He lives in the UK. It's past 1 a.m. This guy he watches all the time. Such a great supporter.
Bro. Good shit.
Absolute beauty. And then we also got Track in here. Thank you guys so much for being here. Blacklist Outdoors. Everyone else, thank you guys so much for chiming in. Michael, $20 donation says, the Mets do nothing else in free agency or trade. What do you think the best case scenario is at season's end?
That's a great question.
Oh, that is a great question. And that's something that I think about a lot. Like if, things like stand still, I don't know. So I'm gonna let you run with it first and then kind of have my thoughts garnered by them.
Yeah. So I mean, anyone who follows like Pacoda rankings or early season projections, the Mets are always favored after the offseason, at least in recent years.
Yep.
Just because everyone likes to see us spend. I honestly think that we have a solid team right now. I believe in our rotation. I believe in our depth, and I believe in the guys that are fringe major leaguers right now. I do think that, you know, we've yet to see the best out of guys like Khalil Lee and Nick Plummer and stuff like that. And, you know, they will get their opportunities, but the starting nine that we have right now is solid. And like, I don't think that Dom Smith is a bad baseball player. I don't think that J.D. Davis is a bad baseball player. I certainly don't think Jeff McNeil is a bad baseball player. I think all of these guys are going to rebound with these new reinforcements. I think they've been sort of rejuvenated by this entire thing, obviously, you know, amidst the lockout and all that. I think the biggest X factor, if no other move is made, is, you know, the starting rotation. Like, what are we going to see through the 3 through 5? Like, what is the depth going to provide for us? I think all of those guys are capable of being in the starting rotation. It's just a matter of who's going to edge out who's going to get injured, and can they make the full 162 game stretch.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's something that I really hope happens, especially when you look at guys like Cookie. Cookie's that's that one that I want to thrive so bad. I really do, and I obviously rushed the hell out of him last year. just for things to really, there was no reason for him to really be rushed looking back. And Tyler McGill, which I know you came out with a fantastic video on. Make sure to check it out, guys, if you haven't.
People got mad at me for that. They didn't watch the video. They just saw the thumbnail. They got mad at me.
I
will say, I forgot to answer the question. I think the best case scenario for this team, if they don't make any other moves, is they are a wild card team. That's my guess. I think somebody else will take the division, but I think they will make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that they will make the playoffs too. If I had to guess, I'd say they're at like an 85+ win team.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling. Like 86
with how things currently stand. They make more moves, which that's inevitably going to happen.
Yeah,
I could see them winning 90+. I'm not going to go and say that they're going to win 100 or anything like that. But 85 as things currently stand, I think is very fair and wild card for sure. But again, the Tyler McGill thing. Yeah, he's someone that's such a big wild card, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to provide next season. Just because you have that ability to have him start in the minors still, or of course you can have him start in the rotation. I think it's a little risky to have him start in the rotation right away. I think he'd have to do so much right. I think you're just banking on too much for a Mets team that, I think still needs more certainties. Similar to kind of David Pearson. David had a great stretch in the shortened season, and then we saw him look like Steven Matz in the first inning over half a start.
Yeah.
So, these guys still need plenty of development time, in my opinion. But one last thing I want to get to with you before we just answer a couple questions to wrap things up is, what is your wish list for the New York Mets? If you had to say just your raw thoughts right now, what are all the moves that you hope to see the Mets do post-lockout? Specifically, what players are most enticing you that you think are best fit?
Great cue. All right, so I like Kutch in the outfield, or a Tommy Pham, so I think get yourself a fourth outfielder that mashes lefties and can relieve in left field for WardyNYM. That's task number one, in my opinion. Task number two, call up Mark Vientos, give him an opening day roster spot. I don't care about Robinson Cano. I really don't. If you avoid the contract, that's cool with me. I'm down for that. Give Vientos a spot. He's the one that's the most major league ready, in my opinion. Everybody else can start in the minors. Number three, you know what? Search the bargain bin. Go find 2 starting pitchers from the bargain bin, whether it's your Danny Duffy, Yusei Kikuchi, whoever else. If you want to break the bank and go get a Clayton Kershaw or Carlos Rodon, that's fine. I don't think it's entirely necessary. Number 4, move Tyler McGill to the bullpen for the start of the season. I think he can be a 2-inning monster with that lethal changeup that he has. I think first time through the order, he was excellent and sort of took a hitch after his first 10 starts when he had to go deeper into games and sort of past his innings limit. Protect him in the first half. Make sure he doesn't go near his innings limit. That way you have him for the second half. You'll have him healthy to relieve one of the starters that inevitably will get injured or fizzle out in some capacity. The dream is to get Kyle Schwarber. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he has way too many suitors, and he basically has his pick of where he can go.
He's got Phillies ran all over him, and
he's got Phillies, Red Sox, Brewers. I think would be a fit.
I wouldn't mind if he goes back to Boston. I gotta make sure I don't go to a Boston game like I did last year with the 7 line just for him to still kill us.
Yeah. Seriously, but I don't think Schwarber will happen. I think he is definitely a missing piece that takes this team over the hump. So I would include him in my wish list there. But I think that you're going to get plenty of fulfillment out of your bench alone. So that's my wish list. It's a small one, but it's it's whatever.
You're keeping it conservative. I'm not surprised. That's what you did last time, and it's smart to start that way. So that way, you don't set yourself up for failure.
Yeah, you get pleasantly surprised.
And this is where I come in. Okay. But when you look at the moves that you would want, I noticed that you didn't mention potentially landing any relievers in the free agent market.
Yeah,
you stand by that?
I think so. I'm not huge on spending money on relievers, which makes me sound like a grubby owner. But the fact is that I think that the Mets already have a really talented bullpen. And if you are, they have some prospects that are close to being ready, major league ready at the very least. And I think if you add Tyler McGill to that bullpen and you sort of kind of just muddle the line between your 6 and 7 starters, between them being in the rotation and the bullpen, that just gives you so many innings that you didn't have last year. I don't know if David Peterson's going to translate well to the bullpen at all, but it's something you could try at the very least. I think Tyler McGill is perfectly built for the bullpen, which is why I'm really high on him starting the season there at the very least. And then you still have May, you still have Lugo, you still have Diaz, you still have Miguel Castro, you still have Drew Smith, you still have 5 or 6 solid guys that make up most of your bullpen. And then you have the X factors. You have Sean Reed-Foley, who showed us flashes of brilliance and then kind of fell off. You have guys there. I don't think that spending $5 million on a reliever is a great investment of money, but if you go out and get a Colin McHugh or something like that, I'm not going to be mad about it.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And relievers are the biggest roller coasters always. And that's why I wasn't like completely distraught when we lost the Loop. Like, yeah, it sucked to see him go, but
it sucked. But you shouldn't give him $17 million. That's crazy.
He got the bag, and like, good for him. That doesn't faze me too much. But when I think personally about relievers, there's one that I've thought about like endlessly since James brought him up to me, and I know you might know where I'm going with this. Is Adam Connolly.
Oh, I did not know where you were going with that.
Okay. Whoa. Yeah, we talked. I had Lefty him reliever. And Mark a couple weeks ago on for top 10 free agent targets, and he just had to throw Adam Connolly in there. It took me a while to even find highlights of the man. So
he's a Marlins guy, right? Here he is. Wow, he had a great 21 Rays guy.
Tampa. Yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting guy. He's very high on. Reminded me a little bit, not nearly to the same degree because it's not like he had success. But Sam McWilliams, McWilliams was like that wild card last year that he thought was going to amount to something. Fortunately, he didn't. They got picked up by the Padres and still didn't do anything. But Connolly has MLB experience. So, I mean, if you're talking about, bargain relievers at least that you don't want to throw the bag at, that's someone that I think is very, very interesting.
Yeah, lefty relievers are so thin right now. I think it's like Conley, Chafin, like Chasen Shreve is one of them, and then the Loop was the big one. And
Shreve was solid when it was a Met.
Shreve was good. Jerry Blevins talked about Shreve a little bit on one of our podcasts that he was a little high on him. I think Shreve went to the Pirates and had like another solid season. He'll probably get a deal somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Absolutely. Yeah. So, okay. Well, I like those. I like that you're more on the conservative side again. And Schwarber, I think that would be huge to land a lefty bat like that, especially in this lineup, because Schwarber can play at the top of the line. He can play anywhere that you want him. And yes, he doesn't have the defensive versatility, but man, oh man, this guy can do one thing that almost every Met last year couldn't outside of Pete Alonso. That was hit a fastball right down the pipe. So yeah, that was a big thing for sure. But okay, so before we wrap things up, folks, we're going to just answer a couple questions. Again, if you guys don't know, this is Jolly All. Please make sure to check him out at the Shea Station podcast, where he co-hosts with Jerry Blevins. Yes, the former Mets reliever. That's an absolute stud. Links down below as always to check it out. And also make sure to check out, of course, his normal channel where he does very unique baseball content. This is how you got to where you are right now. Very interesting video that he came out with, the latest on opening day. Do you want to touch on that briefly, just so people can get an idea?
I love talking about baseball players that nobody cares about. That's really just the gist. Any title video of mine that starts with every MLB team, it's just because I want to talk about random baseball guys that nobody cares about. And people love it, which is awesome. I think that's so great.
It is cool because you really don't see many people out there. Like, first guy that comes to my mind is obviously Foolish. When you think about guys that, like, at least you're trying to find like one rare stat where it's like, how's
right, like Foolish designs a narrative around it, whereas I just like, here's 15 guys you haven't thought about in 10 years. Let's go.
Yeah. And it's fun though, because especially when, think about the 2016 Mets and stuff like that. Like, that was a great video. And I know, like, my personal guy that I love to think about, and it upsets me that I just fell so short after having such a high. He was like almost like the McNeil before McNeil in my mind was TJ Rivera. Yeah, he's just the guy. Like, especially because I've always been a diehard Mets fan, but I really didn't get heavily into baseball and the Mets, like, following it daily until halfway through the 2015 season. Like, I'm very new into this. So following him, following that group, like that's like all where like my childhood really
for any Rivera fans that are listening, he played in Pirates AAA last year, so he's still right there. He's still right there. Awesome. He finally got over some arm troubles last year. If all goes well, you could see him next year. You never know.
Did he have Tommy John? Is that what happened?
He did. He had 2 separate Tommy John surgeries.
Damn.
Crazy.
That sucks. That is crazy.
As a fielder. Crazy.
I know. Yeah, hoping the best for him. Yeah. But let's see here. Okay, let's see if we got a couple questions before we wrap things up. Let's see. Elfin says, what is going on with the club mentality? Is there a club leader? Things seem all over the place with these guys gelling. Well, it's really hard to answer that right now, considering we're in the lockout. I do think, however, that Buck Showalter is really going to just round things up. And Max Scherzer, I mean, look, if Max is leading the way with the MLBPA, I'm pretty sure he'll be just fine in the Mets locker room. Those are the kind of voices you need. Starling Marte has been known for his character. Eddie Escobar, that Trevor May has spoken glowingly of. Same thing with his character. These are guys that are really going to help not just give you a playoff mentality, but just true professionalism, no nonsense, if you will.
I think it's also important to note that among the guys that represent the Mets at the MLBPA meetings right now are Lindor and Scherzer, obviously, but Brandon Nimmo's there too. And I really like that. Brandon Nimmo's been part of the Mets since 2016. And I don't want to say that he's taken a back seat at all, but he's always been like the happy-go-lucky, like, babyface guy on the Mets. And I think him stepping into sort of a leadership role, because he is one of the most senior members on the team now, aside from like Jacob deGrom, and that's pretty much it. So like he kind of needs to embrace that a little bit. So I think guys just being accountable and being professional, and if you're a senior on the team, acting like it, are the most important things for gelling the team together.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We got from Pemet. I missed this one. Thank you for the donation again, my man. I have not given up on Dom Smith. Turns 27 in June, and I'm willing to give him 2022 to see if last year was an anomaly. I'm not giving up on Dom either. I agree. I just don't think the Mets should try to prioritize him, that he needs to have like an everyday role. Yeah, they have to go beyond that now. They can't go back to what happened, you know, especially after that down year. I think you need to make sure that you're trying to get as much certainties and get creative with him as a bench role. Look, he thrives a lot at the bench at times for the Mets. So I'm not against him keeping him there. The only downside is that you just don't really have any defensive versatility with him.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to see him in left field again, I don't think, especially with this DH. And like you said before, that's a really good point to make. Dom was really good off the bench at the start of last season. I don't know if the Mets will give him the entirety of 2022 to figure things out, and Pete Alonso seemingly never gets injured, so I don't think he'll find time at first base either. But this DH just opens up a whole new world for the guys that would otherwise be castaways like Dom Smith or JD Davis. I think the Mets are much more keen on Dom than they are on JD for sure, especially just with Dom's like contact bat, and he's a lefty, so a lot of things work in his favor. So yeah, you'll see. I don't think Dom's getting traded. That's my hot take.
You don't think Dom's getting traded? Interesting.
No, I don't think Dom's getting traded. I don't think anyone's getting traded, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hot
okay.
Take.
I mean,
crazy.
You're a little crazy. Just the JD aspect of that all, I think, sticks out the most to me.
If anyone, it would be JD. I would say that, but I don't know. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Okay. Interesting. If it does happen, though, then we got to bring you on and see exactly why was it so different, right? Yeah. Bambino says, "Is Conforto staying with us? And did you guys buy his jersey like I did? I was very close. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, that does suck. Yeah, I was very, very close. I was such a heavy bias advocate, and I was trying to, make sure that I really thought he was going to stay here. Again, a lot of things that we thought were going to happen in the offseason were the opposite. Yeah. And, now we know. And that all goes in hand with who's running your front office outside of Steve Cohen. Billy Epler came in. I think it was just a completely different mentality. Yes, I think that the Mets were trying to keep buys regardless on who they hired. But it seemed like, especially when Billy came in, there was different factors that went in, especially when it came to character. Not that I think that there's anything wrong with Baez's character. I know that thumbs down. We're not going to get into all that. I was someone that, didn't view it as nearly as big of a deal as others did personally. And that just goes on, depending on who you're talking to as a fan. But I do know that I bought a Francisco Lindor jersey when the Mets first trade for him, because I was like, there's no way in hell they're trading for this guy without extending him. Now, granted, it did take to the final minute before last season started. Yeah, I was sweating a little bit, 100%, but I was still happy in the end. But yeah, Conforto, do I think he's coming back? I don't know. I think that there's a decent possibility, but I don't think he's priority number one for the outfield.
My answer is flat no. I don't think it's happening. Okay. Sorry. We're at Q&A now, so I want to give straight answers and not beat around the bush too much. I don't think it's happening. I think that you're seeing a new frontier of Mets players. I really think the old remnants are just going to be Nimmo and deGrom, and it's going to be all new faces. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's completely fair. I think you're honestly more right than even really thinking that there's just a decent idea. But again, we're going to soon find out. Ladies Man says, how do y'all feel about McNeil DH to let him focus on hitting and healing? I proposed this to you when we talked last. I thought McNeil would be a really
fun
idea for DH, but that's when Baez was here. So if you're going to have McNeil, you know what I mean? If you're going to have McNeil at DH.
Well, here's the thing. So I like this idea a lot if you do want him to focus on hitting.
Yeah.
But it only works if you want Mark Vientos to play the field, or if you want Robinson Cano to play the field. It works a lot better.
Don't make moves. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot better when you have Baez, when you have somebody that's solid at second base, better than McNeil is. We can move Eddie back and forth from second to third. I don't think Brett Beatty's going to be ready in time, so we don't have to talk about him. But if this is an approach that works, I don't think we'll see him as an everyday DH, but McNeil will probably get started to a DH. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either, but he does have, even though that he might not be a Gold Glove at second base, he does have that versatility that Epler loves, obviously. Like, he can really play all over the place. Even if it's not fantastic, you can say the same thing about Chris Bryant. You know, there's a lot of similarities there. So I think that that's the only downside, really, if you have him at DH, just knowing that you're losing that potential upside of getting creative with him throughout the game, potentially. But again, the Mets are in more of a certain spot than they've been in previous years defensively as it is. They have guys that actually play the proper
position.
Have
Luis Guillorme on the bench if you want to start him at second base, and he can play every infield position. So there's that too.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. All right, so we'll get to like 2 or 3 more questions before we wrap things up. Tim says, Game 7 of a World Series, who do you want out there, Scherzer or
DeGrom. Next question, DeGrom. Next question.
Yep.
Easy. Easiest question on my list.
Yeah,
easy.
Even though I'm wearing all the Scherzer stuff right now. Yeah.
I love Scherzer. It's great. But
I do too. And again, playoff time. Look, the fact that we can even like talk about that without thinking that this is a joke or that we're just talking about playing a video game is pretty fantastic.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
It's decent.
Yeah.
James says, are we all cool with Diaz as our closer? He can be the best closer in baseball, but if he falters multiple times by Memorial Day, what do we do then? Good question. I'm comfortable personally with Diaz as closer. I think he proved plenty last year. Yes, down the stretch, he had his concerns for sure. I also think, however, that Diaz needs to find the Mets need to a certain extent, prioritize him gaining a little bit more versatility. The fact that this guy cannot pitch out of the ninth is concerning to me. Like, I get it that he's here for a closer role. I 100% get that. But there's going to be games where you need him outside of the closer role. Like, that's inevitably going to happen. And he just proved more often than not, they simply couldn't do it. Like, it just felt like he was a shell of what he normally was when he's in the closing spot. So, yeah, I think he's there, but I'm not going to lie. If, say, like, he is going to be fluctuating in his performance by Memorial Day, I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets found themselves, lean into the trade deadline to make something happen and kind of bolster things and give themselves more stability. I feel like that they would have to, obviously, in that situation.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate for closer by committee. I think you take the freshest guy who's on his best day and you put him in the most high leverage situation. And it's not like Diaz has never not pitched in the ninth inning. I mean, in 2020, he pitched in 26 games. He only finished 19 of them, and he only got 6 saves. So, like, a lot of those opportunities were not save opportunities, and that was the best version of Edwin Diaz in a Mets uniform that we saw. So I know that it's, like, kind of a mentality thing for him a little bit, but, like, you have closer caliber pitchers everywhere in this bullpen. Seth Lugo has closed games. Trevor May has closed games. Drew Smith is definitely capable of fielding soft contact in the ninth inning and getting a save. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be this one-dimensional thing where Edwin Diaz is the closer. Like, it's the same thing with the Brewers. Devin Williams got a couple saves last year in relief of Josh Hader, and obviously those are 2 world-class relief pitching talents. But Edwin Diaz is right up there with them, so you just need to put him in situations where he can succeed, even if it's something that he doesn't believe himself that he's comfortable with it.
Yeah, that naturally you think that would instill some more confidence in him, especially if everything goes well. Like, Diaz has he has all the talent in the world. He's always shown those capabilities. The one at bat that always sticks out in my head, or at least the save, was not this past season, but the year prior, like at the beginning of the year against the Phillies, just shutting down, you know, Hoskins and Harper. Like, that's prime Diaz to me. Like, and we've seen it. Now, can we get it on a consistent level? Hopefully. I think the problem with Diaz more than anything is just the bad narrative because of the Kelenic deal. Like, if he wasn't part of that, we don't even nearly have the discussions about him to the same extent, even though that he did break my heart in his first year, like left and right. I went to so many games where he just blew it. Like, do you remember that one in Philly where Todd Frazier tied it with a home run in the top of the ninth and the bomb ninth? He just gave up everything. I was
2019 was such an anomaly. I'm not going to pretend like Edwin Diaz was good that year. There was definitely an extent of bad luck that year, but it's so weird, but we're so far removed from it now, and like, he obviously has much better defense behind him as well too, which I think has helped him. But Edwin Diaz, like, he's gonna pump 101, and if contact is made, it's coming out hard. So, like, I do take solace in him being like this nasty pitcher, but at the same time, like, I know I'm a Drew Smith advocate, but I love soft contact guys in high leverage situations, and Edwin Diaz stresses me out because he's a strikeout pitcher. And a lot of the times guys just make really hard contact on him. But I think he's a great pitcher, and I think that the Mets should just roll with closer by committee. That's my answer. Yeah, no, agreed. Jersey, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Really appreciate that. All right. Pet Mets. My goodness, Pet Mets.
Thank you for the donation. I don't believe
paying your rent, bro. Jesus.
I need it, so I appreciate it. I don't believe Davey Johnson gets the full appreciation he deserves for the job he did with the Mets. 1,000%. Always in the running for the playoffs. Mets should do something for him. Agreed, and I think that they will. I think with the Steve Cohen era, you're going to see more and more appreciation of former Mets in whatever capacity may be. We'll find out. But they're on a great path from what they've done so far in literally just like a year and a half. Yeah. It's tremendous. So, yeah, I expect Davey Johnson to get more recognition. How? We'll find out.
Yeah, I don't think it's a number retirement, but I definitely think he's going to get invited to like Old Timers Day, and I think the 86 Mets have been getting some love. We did the all-time Mets draft on Shea Station. He was actually the manager that I took just because like he had to rabble up those personalities and those, habits in that locker room and turn those guys into a winning team, which is a lot easier said than done. He didn't do some things that a lot of people have scrutinized him for, but at the same time, like a lot of those guys were responsible for their own decisions and stuff like that. And like, there's only so much that a baseball manager can do outside of the game of baseball itself. And I think that Davey Johnson did the best of his ability. And, he brought a chip to New York, which only one other guy can say they've ever done for the Mets at least. So yeah, I do think he'll get some love. I think that Steve Cohen does really have a soft spot more so for the 86 Mets than the 69 Mets. And the 69 Mets have always been the team that gets far more love for some reason, which I've never really understood. So yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up.
I don't think it's too hard to understand just because of the characters. Yeah. But at the same time, like, I don't know. Let me put it this way. It wasn't like the Mets were the only team in the league kind of acting the way that they were in the 80s, and that goes for every sport.
We can go on forever about that, but like,
exactly. Michael says Juan Soto's Met the next 3 years. True or false? False, because he has to be a free agent first.
Yes. There's no way they're not going to trade him. They're going to do everything in their power to bring him back. And then maybe trade him at like the trade deadline in his last year. But I just
and then it'll be Max Scherzer situation 2.0. We won't sign or get traded to see it'll work perfectly.
And like the asking price is going to be so high, like ridiculously high, and like no.
The Nationals, if they're smart though, honestly, and they know that they won't be able to extend him, they absolutely
trade him now.
Should trade him as soon as you can.
Maybe.
I mean, like within the next 2 years.
Like they're not like I honestly like. Nats fans would scoff at that, but like they're not going to compete right now, and they just made a great deal to get Keibert and Josiah Gray. Like, why not just keep adding really, really good young pieces if you can? I don't know. Just spitballing.
Yeah, no, Nats fans aren't happy about that, but hey, that's our Mets fan input. Last comment of the night, folks. What is the X factor for this season in general? What's your X factor?
Carlos Carrasco. Carlos Carrasco is the biggest X factor if he can be 2020 or 2018 Carlos Carrasco and provide stability beneath the 1-2. It's going to make all the difference for that rotation. If you can just worry about filling 4 and 5 instead of 3, 4, and 5, it makes a world of difference. I think that this offense will bounce back naturally. I think there's a ton of guys ready to get reps on the bench and in the field. I don't think the offense would be as much of a concern as it was last year. And you would be a fool to not be concerned about the bottom half of the starting rotation. So if Cookie can be Cookie and really make that trade look even worse than it already is for the Indians, I think that's the biggest X factor.
Love that. Now, for me, I'm going to go offensive just because you went pitching. Sure. And I'm going to go with Francisco Lindor. And the reason why is there's just such a bad narrative on this man's name, thinking that his contract even kicked in. Yet, no, it starts this season. So now you can start to criticize the contract if you want, okay?
A lot of people don't know that. It's crazy.
A lot of people don't know that. Yep. And when you look at Lindor's numbers, he was very normal Lindor after, the first 2 months of the season.
Yeah.
And you can tell that when he's on, he's an absolute stud. So I think Lindor, he's going to be rejuvenized. He's smiling after the meetings today, even though that they didn't even really go that well. Nope. He's always going to be smiling. So I think Lindor is someone that if he just plays to his potential, which I fully expect him to, really is going to not just get on the softer side of Mets fans, but also just for the Mets. He's really going to hone in as that leader more than what we saw so far, especially given all the controversy that we had last season. It's time that we get controversy away, just focus on ball and playing great ball. And I think Buck Showalter is actually going to be really good for him, knowing that you kind of set expectations for him a little bit. I felt like he was I think he was a little too comfortable in that locker room with Louis. They almost felt like that they were dapping them each other up a little bit too much versus instead just like direction, like I'm coach, your player type of thing. I think he's going to have a better head on his shoulders this season. And if he plays to his potential, Francisco Lindor is arguably the best shortstop in baseball. Definitely one of the tops for sure.
Still can be top 5 in my opinion. He was an above league average hitter last season. He had 20 home runs and he played better defense at short than pretty much anybody, which is all you can ask for him, really. But people will never be satisfied.
No, they won't. They won't. He can literally, go for a batting title next year, and I don't know how Swade fans are going to be. Let's see, though. Time will tell, right? But that's going to wrap up this live stream, folks. I hope you guys all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe. As always, really appreciate a huge shout out and a clap for Jolly Olive coming on the channel. Really appreciate. Long overdue. We got to get you back on the channel and more of a
get me back when some games are going on.
Yeah, when games are going. Would love to actually talk about Mets baseball whenever that's going to happen. But guys, again, if you're just chiming in or you're watching a replay and weren't listening earlier, make sure to check out Jolly Olive wherever you get your Mets podcast for the Shea Station podcast with Jerry Blevins. Check out his normal channel and just check him out everywhere. He's doing a great job, and this is just a start for him in the baseball world, and it's very exciting to see what you're going to come up with this season again, whenever it's going to start.
Appreciate it, Wardy. Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching. I'll talk to you later. Let's go, Mets.